Chapter 16:19. The primordial god silk came from the primordial god silk when the world faced the threat of crisis. It used all of its vital energies to spit out the silk to fend off the crisis. So the primordial god silk was a supreme treasure of the world. It was extremely rare and precious. Once the power within it completely awakened, it would not be easy for Jianshun to refine it with his current strength. Under the resistance of the primordial god silk, it would take him a rather long time to refine it. However, the primordial god silk was currently carrying out its mission, using all of its power to fend off the evil spirit. It did not have the power to worry about anything else. So Jianshun's refinement of the primordial god silk became extraordinarily smooth. He progressed extremely quickly as well. A while later, Jianshun completely refined the primordial god silk through the sword spirits. Only now did he understand just how terrifying and vast the power of divinity hidden within the primordial god silk was. It was a vast amount of energy that even shocked him, and it was as deep as the ocean. However, Jianshun could sense that the power did not seem to possess any great offensive power. It was only a natural counter to the evil spirit, and it was exactly because of this that the energy that he found to be extremely gentle was able to cause so much damage to the evil spirit. At the same time, Jianshun could clearly sense that the tremendous power hidden within the primordial god silk was flowing away at an extremely terrifying rate. Clearly, the power within the primordial god silk was being consumed to fend off the powerful evil spirit outside, and it was being consumed at an extremely rapid rate. The primordial god silk can't keep the crisis at bay for too long. I need to destroy the crisis before it runs out of power. Jianshun knew that time was tight. After refining the primordial god silk, he did not remain there for too long. His consciousness immediately returned to his original body. Although the primordial god silk could deal with the crisis of the world, the primordial god silk was not necessarily enough to destroy the crisis. He had learned from the sword spirits that there had been cases where the crisis of the world had suppressed the primordial god silk. In the end, the primordial god silk was destroyed and the crisis of the world occurred. Jianshun's consciousness returned to his original body, and he immediately sensed that he had gained a connection with the primordial god silk. At that moment, he felt like the primordial god silk had become a part of him, like his arms and legs, allowing him to command it like an arm. The only flaw was that he had just refined the primordial god silk, so he was still extremely unfamiliar with its usage and control. However, it was also at this moment that an extremely great sense of danger suddenly appeared in Jianshun's heart. This sense of danger was not sensed by Jianshun himself. Instead, it came from the primordial god silk. At that moment, the evil spirit's power had reached its peak. Destructive energy pulsed wildly within its body condensed from red mist. The power was so great that it made Jianshun's face change drastically. The evil spirit had already prepared its most powerful attack. It wanted to break free from the primordial god silk suppression in a single stroke. Jianshun naturally understood this as well. He knew that the evil spirit's attack was no small matter from the sense of danger he sensed from the primordial god silk. Even though the primordial god silk specialized in suppressing evil spirits, the attack would still severely damage it. Jianshun bellowed out. His soul connected with the primordial god silk, and he used the power hidden within the primordial god silk in a rather unfamiliar manner. He pushed the power of the primordial god silk to its limits. Immediately, the primordial god silk shone with a dazzling golden light. It was as resplendent as the sun, illuminating a region of empty space. Under Jianshun's control, the power within the primordial god silk began to boil. Under the illumination of the golden light, the evil spirit's blood-red figure immediately dispersed at a visible rate. After Jianshun refined the primordial god silk, it was clearly much more powerful than before. However, Jianshun did not rejoice at all because the sense of danger he sensed from the primordial god silk had not weakened. Instead, it had become even more powerful. The Spirit King also sensed the destructive storm brewing within the evil spirit. His face changed as well, and without any hesitation, he immediately retreated as quickly as he could, retreating into the distance in a single instance. Boom! Suddenly, a rumble that shook up the entire universe rang out. The destructive energy that the evil spirit had been brewing within exploded loudly, turning into an unimaginably powerful force that wreaked havoc in outer space. It destroyed the entire region of space, reducing it to eternal darkness. At that moment, the evil spirit used a method similar to self-destruction. In order to deal with the primordial god silk that completely suppressed it, it went as far as to use all of its power to self-destruct and erupt with its greatest power. This was because if it did not do that, it would not have been able to break free from the primordial god silk suppression. Not only would the primordial god silk divide its power, but some of its ability to devour the essence of the universe would be restricted as well. The primordial god silk was like a lone boat in the ocean before this incomparably wild and violent energy. It began to sway as the golden light it emitted flickered. The divinity hidden within it was being exhausted at a shocking rate. Jianshun vomited blood as he was blown away like a cannonball. If it were not for the primordial god silk that had nullified over 80% of the power, he would have died in the end. He probably would have died long ago from the self-destruction of the evil spirit. However, even though he had only endured 20% of the power, he was still extremely heavily injured. The primordial god silk's golden light became dimmer and dimmer. It only lasted for a few seconds under the terrifying force of the explosion. In the end, with a gentle sound, the primordial god silk snapped, and its golden light completely dimmed. In the end, it was drowned out by the violent energy. A huge black hole that was several tens of thousands of kilometers wide had appeared at the center of the explosion. Energy surged in the surroundings, shaking the surroundings. A terrifying suction force came from the black hole, devouring everything in the surroundings. It was also because of the black hole that the terrifying shock waves from the self-destruction of the evil spirit did not spread far away. They were restricted by the suction force from the black hole. Affected by the suction of the black hole, not only did the nearby asteroids and planets deviate from their trajectories and slowly fly toward the black hole, but even the planet where the Tianyuan continent resided, as well as the two halves of the moon and sun, began to tremble slightly as they slowly moved in the direction of the black hole. The Origin Realm experts gathered in outer space of the Tianyuan continent struck out at the same time. They controlled the god-slaying formation and shot out a resplendent strand of sword chi toward the space in front of them, shattering it. It formed a boundary between the black hole and the planet where the Tianyuan continent resided, blocking the suction from the black hole. Although the black hole was terrifying and could devour planets and all matter, the attack they had used had already touched upon the boundary of godhood. It possessed the power to go against the black hole. Has the crisis of the world been destroyed? Jianshun hovered in the distance as dense, radiant saint force enveloped him. He stared ahead with a pale face. He could still sense the primordial god silk weakly. He knew that it had snapped, but what he truly cared about was not the primordial god silk, but the crisis of the world. However, the space up ahead had been shattered, and there was a huge black hole. Although he could ignore the suction force, he was unable to extend his soul through it. I've finally destroyed it. Without this thing that specifically counters me, how are you supposed to stop me? At this moment, a mental pulse swept through the entire region. Near the huge black hole, a red mist permeated the surroundings. A while later, it condensed back into the evil spirit. Chapter 16:20. Jianshun's heart suddenly sank the moment he sensed the evil spirit's consciousness. His face became extremely ugly. The evil spirit had actually not dispersed after such a terrifying explosion. But now that the primordial god silk had been ripped apart, it was impossible for him and the Spirit King to fend off the evil spirit with its strength without the assistance of the primordial god silk. However, Jianshun's eyes narrowed very soon. He stared at the blood-red figure before the huge black hole. He could clearly sense that the evil spirit had become much weaker after the explosion. Although it still posed a great threat to Jianshun, It was no longer as undefeatable as before. Jianshan actually felt like he could rival the evil spirit right now. Jianshan's eyes immediately lit up. His wounds rapidly healed under the dual effects of Radiant Saint Force and the chaotic body. However, Jianshan did not waste any time on healing. Before he could fully recover, a surging presence radiated from his body. The azulate sword shone brightly as well. Jianshan gripped the Ziying sword tightly with his bloodied hands, as if he had become a huge sword. Dense violet light enveloped him as he turned into a streak of light, stabbing toward the evil spirit before the black hole with an unstoppable force. As he rapidly approached, the suction force from the black hole became stronger and stronger. It devoured stars, light, and all other resources and energy, but it was unable to devour Jianshan, nor was it able to devour the light from the twin swords. With Jianshan's current strength, he could ignore the tremendous suction force from the black hole. Even if he fell into the black hole, he could still break free. Although his cultivation was at reciprocity, his battle prowess had reached godhood, which made him a godlike existence in the lower world. He was powerful enough to make the world tremble, enough to destroy the starry sky. At the same time, the Spirit King also noticed how weak the evil spirit was. Without any hesitation, he charged toward the evil spirit with his Cloudstream sword. From afar, Jianshan and the Spirit King seemed to have turned into two bright meteors. The flickering light from their swords shone brightly as they shot toward the black hole with devastating power. Huge spatial cracks would be left behind wherever they went, forming a dark river. The evil spirit became infuriated when it sensed Jianshan and the Spirit King's approach. It roared out furiously, and the roar turned into a torrential pulse of consciousness that wreaked havoc in space. In its eyes, both Jianshan and the Spirit King were only food. Since they were food, they should be obediently waiting for it to enjoy them slowly. However, not only had the food weakened it to such an extent, it had even resisted it time and time again. This was a deep provocation that it could not accept. The humanoid figure of the evil spirit suddenly dispersed, turning into a dense, red mist. The mist quickly formed a whirlpool, and as the whirlpool spun, the essence of the universe immediately surged toward it. Not only did it absorb the essence of the universe, but it also absorbed the energy in the surroundings. It even began to compete with the black hole. Jianshan and the Spirit King, who were rapidly approaching the two resplendent streaks of light, both felt their life force become unstable. It was as if it wanted to leave their bodies and head toward the whirlpool. Devouring was one of the evil spirit's innate abilities. Without the suppression of the primordial god Silk, its ability to devour was revealed once again. However, if it was in its peak condition, the two of them would not have been able to stop it if it wanted to devour the life force of Jianshan and the Spirit King. However, after exploding, it had become much weaker than Jianshan and the Spirit King, even though it had not died. As a result, it was extremely difficult for it to devour the life force of the two of them. In the end, the devouring power was unable to approach the two of them under the full resistance of Jianshan and the Spirit King. God damn it, it's all because of that damned bastard. He's wasted far too much of my power. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have ended up like this. I can't even devour two weak pieces of food. If I was in my peak condition, the presence that I hate and the power that counters me wouldn't have been able to do anything to me. The evil spirit roared. It radiated with a surging presence of resentment. As soon as it mentioned the bastard it was referring to, it would grit its teeth in resentment. As the evil spirit sent out a thought, a huge, blood-red fist condensed. It hurtled toward Jianshan and the Spirit King with devastating power. The fist was extremely large, enveloping Jianshan and the Spirit King. Linear lightning release. Jianshan bellowed out and used the linear lightning release again. Lightning immediately flickered around him before his speed skyrocketed. He shot toward the blood-red fist as a bolt of lightning. This was the most powerful sword technique Jianshan had grasped right now. However, using it right now was rather risky because the huge black hole was right in front of him, The linear lightning release was just too fast, so it was not something Jianshun could control. If he was careless, he might charge into the black hole. However, he had no other choice. He could already tell that the evil spirit was devouring energy to recover. He needed to block the evil spirit's attack all by himself before getting the Spirit King to heavily injure the evil spirit. Otherwise, once the evil spirit recovered some of its strength, it would be even more difficult to deal with it. He might even lose his chance at survival. Boom! Jianshun violently collided with the blood-red fist. Lightning flickered around him a few times before collapsing. Jianshun vomited blood as he was blown away by the powerful force. His organs were pulverized at that moment, and even most of his bones were broken. He was already heavily injured, so now that he was heavily injured, his wounds became even more severe. The blood-red fist rapidly collapsed as well. Jianshun had blocked the evil spirit's attack at the cost of being heavily injured. With the collapse of the fist, the Spirit King was no longer obstructed. He charged into the whirlpool as a resplendent streak of light. A will that splits the heavens, illusory sword of the fingers of the sword. The Spirit King's voice rang out from the vortex of vengeful spirits. His voice was shrill and seemed to be roaring out furiously. It was filled with madness as well as great pain that anyone could hear from his voice. Chapter 16:21. The vortex immediately collapsed. Under the endless power released by the blurry diagram, most of the red mist directly dispersed, as if it had evaporated into thin air. As a result, the red mist became thinner and thinner. At the same time, its presence rapidly weakened, and in the end, it almost fell below godhood. Even the colossal black hole that spanned tens of thousands of kilometers trembled violently at that moment. Its suction began to weaken, and it seemed to show signs of collapsing. The Spirit King's second move of a will that splits the heavens was extraordinarily powerful. He had dealt the most severe damage to the evil spirit when it was at its weakest. Even the huge black hole seemed to be affected. However, he had not grasped the second move, Astral Finger Illusion. He had forced himself to use it this time, paying a heavy price. Just his soul had burned up by 40%, so the pain he had to endure was unimaginable. At the same time, Jianshun dragged his heavily injured body over aggressively with a layer of dense Radiant Saint Force origin energy around him. He was very heavily injured, to the point where no one else at the same level as him would have been able to endure. However, his 8th layer chaotic body granted him an extremely tenacious life force and a tough body. Even with such heavy injuries, he was still able to continue fighting and use battle prowess at godhood. The evil spirit was extremely weak right now. It struggled to maintain its cultivation at godhood, almost falling below the origin realm. When it saw Jianshun charge over, it immediately turned into a red mist and fled. To no surprise, it was headed for the Tian-Yuan continent. There were many creatures on the Tian-Yuan continent. Just the origin realm experts numbered in the dozens. In the eyes of the evil spirit, they were all delicious food. As long as it devoured them, it would be able to recover some of its energy in the shortest amount of time possible. Jianshun coldly stared at the evil spirit that was flying toward the Tian-Yuan continent. He immediately calmed down when he sensed how weak the evil spirit was. After a moment of hesitation, he did not immediately head to the Tian-Yuan continent to provide assistance. Instead, he used his vague senses to finally find the 2 pieces of primordial god silk. The silk floated near the black hole. Although the power within it had been severely depleted, there was still a sliver of it left, preventing it from being sucked into the black hole. Jianshun only hurried to the Tian-Yuan continent after obtaining the primordial god silk. The experts of the 2 worlds were already waiting sternly in outer space. They had formed 2 lines of defense. The origin realm experts who controlled the god-slaying formation stood at the very front, while Shangwanmu sat in outer space sternly. She placed the zither of the demonic cry across her legs. Behind them was the second line of defense formed by the sainthood experts of the 2 worlds. At this moment, the god-slaying formation lit up and pulsed with powerful energy. The palm-sized formation flew into the air and trapped the evil spirit within it under the control of all the origin realm experts of the two worlds. Strands of powerful sword chi condensed within the formation, forming a net that passed through the red mist of the evil spirit. Every single strand of sword chi possessed astonishing power. Although they were slightly weaker than Jinshin and the Spirit King, they had just barely reached the level of godhood. However, the God-slaying formation was still unable to completely trap the weakened evil spirit. The God-slaying formation shook violently. In the end, a boom erupted from the formation space. The formation space collapsed, and the light of the God-slaying formation dimmed. It was blown far away by the powerful shockwaves of energy. The evil spirit trapped within turned into a red mist and quickly charged out. However, the red mist seemed to have dimmed even more. Although the God-slaying formation had been destroyed in the blink of an eye, it had weakened the evil spirit further. All the origin realm experts of the two worlds who controlled the God-slaying formation suffered a great backlash as well. They all vomited blood. At the same time, the gentle and pleasant sound of a zither suddenly rang out. When the sound reached the ears of the cultivators of the two worlds, it was like heavenly music. However, when the gentle sound reached the evil spirit's soul, it exploded violently like thunder, immediately causing the evil spirit's soul to become unsteady. His consciousness actually became rather unstable. Along with the sound of the zither, there were notes visible to the naked eye that turned into ripples formed by sound waves. They were like sharp swords that shot at the evil spirit in the red fog like lightning, causing the red fog to fluctuate a few times. Immediately, some of the red fog began to dissipate under the attack of the sound waves. The red mist was the evil spirit's original body, as well as the source of its power. As the mist dispersed, the evil spirit's presence rapidly weakened as well. However, the evil spirit could only endure it silently at this moment. It endured the drastic decrease in its strength and directly charged toward the Tian-Yuan continent. There were a large number of living beings on the Tian-Yuan continent, so the presence of life was so tremendous that even the evil spirit in its peak condition would be tempted. It would directly rush over from the depths of outer space. Although it was injured and very weak now, it could recover in the shortest amount of time possible as long as it devoured the tremendous presence of life on the Tian-Yuan continent. Its target was the many ordinary people on the Tian-Yuan continent, as well as the weaker cultivators. It did not pay any attention to the origin realm experts of the two worlds. If it was in its peak condition, it could easily devour the origin realm experts, but now that it was so weak and the origin realm experts were gathered together, it would take some time to devour them. However, it did not have enough time to do so, with Jinshan chasing after it. As a result, it could only target the weaker people and weaker cultivators. Although the vitality of these people was nowhere close to the vitality of the origin realm, it was effortless for it to devour them. It could devour all of their vitality in a single moment to recover. Boom! With a boom, the second line of defense formed by the sainthood experts clashed with the evil spirit, but it shattered in a single moment. The evil spirit's red mist immediately expanded, enveloping over 100 holy emperors nearby and devouring all the life within them. However, when it wanted to devour even more holy emperors, it sensed Jinshin's pursuit from outer space. It could not help but come to a halt. In particular, when it discovered the two pieces of primordial god silk in Jinshin's hand, its heart trembled for some reason. It no longer bothered with devouring the holy emperors around it. It shot toward the Tian-Yuan continent as a red mist before condensing into a huge whirlpool. An extremely terrifying suction appeared, absorbing all the essence and life in the surroundings. Immediately, all the vegetation within a radius of several 100,000 kilometers withered. The mountains and rivers became ashen as well, losing all their life force. The life force of all the ordinary people in the area was drained away in a single moment, turning them into dried corpses. Soon after, Many cultivators died. First were saints, then great saints, then saint masters, great saint masters, and even earth saint masters. In the blink of an eye, countless people in a radius of several 100,000 kilometers had been reduced to corpses. The origin realm experts from the two worlds all shot cold gazes in outer space as they pursued the evil spirit with the god-slaying formation in their hands. Countless people died in the world every day, and at the same time, countless babies were born. They did not care about the lives of these people, but their deaths allowed the evil spirit to recover its power, so they needed to stop it. Chapter 16:22. The evil spirit's devouring force was extremely powerful. This was one of its innate abilities, allowing it to devour all the energy in the world. Under the terrifying devouring force, countless mountains and rivers lost their life. The entire land darkened, and in just a short moment, a region of several 100,000 kilometers had become deathly silent. There were many kingdoms and cities of various sizes within this region. However, at this moment, the bustling streets of these kingdoms and cities had fallen silent. Countless mercenaries and merchants of various strengths collapsed on the ground at the same time. All of their vitality and vital energies had vanished in a single moment, turning countless people into ice-cold corpses. The deaths of these people were completely silent. These weak people didn't have the slightest ability to resist. In a short moment, they turned into corpses. They didn't even have time to react. Their faces still retained the various expressions they had when they were alive. Although Earth Saint Masters could last a little longer, it was still difficult for them to survive under the terrifying suction force. In just a few seconds, all of their life force had been sucked away. The greater the range of the evil spirit's devouring force, the more powerful it would be. Before, it could devour over 100 holy emperor, because they were extremely close to it. Now that it had expanded its devouring range to several 100,000 kilometers, its devouring force was obviously much weaker, allowing the Earth Saint Masters to last for a few seconds. As the evil spirit devoured the energy, strands of life immediately gathered from all directions. In the end, they formed a huge vortex completely condensed from life, vital essence, and spirit. They all merged into the evil spirit's body, causing its presence to slowly strengthen. Although the people it devoured were very weak, there were just far too many of them. They numbered in the hundreds of millions, so the exact number was difficult to estimate. Just how terrifying would it be when so much vitality gathered together? If it was given enough time, it would be able to recover around 70 or 80% of its strength, even if it could not return to its peak condition. Use your full strength. You have to stop it. Shangwan Mu called out. She was stern as she began to play the zither as hard as she could. With her strength at the peak of mid-reciprocity, she would not be able to achieve much against the evil spirit alone. She could only use her specialties to affect the evil spirit's soul with her music. Only then would she be able to achieve greater results. Soul attacks were extremely mysterious and wondrous, and they were very difficult to block. Whether it was the experts of the Tianyuan continent or the Saints' world, they were extremely troubled by soul attacks. They could only endure them forcefully. There was no other way. The evil spirit was the same. Under the interference of Shangwan Mu's zither, the swirl of red mist immediately began to tremble. Although Shangwan Mu was unable to harm the evil spirit's consciousness, even if she played the zither with her full strength, she managed to slow down the rate at which the evil spirit absorbed life force from the zither. The origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent and the Saints' world hurried over as quickly as they could with the Godslayer scroll. However, at this moment, a violet streak of light tore through space, instantly surpassing them and heading straight for the evil spirit. Jinshin had already returned from outer space as quickly as he could. He stared at the evil spirit coldly as the azulate swords hovered above his head. He gripped a broken strand of primordial god silk in one hand as he used all the remaining power within it. Immediately, the primordial god silk began to shine with golden light. However, the golden light was much dimmer than before. Swish! The strand of primordial god silk in Jinshin's left hand shot out with lightning speed. It formed a huge, golden net in the air, trapping the evil spirit within. He used the power of the primordial god silk to suppress the evil spirit's devouring ability, while the strand of primordial god silk in Jinshin's right hand turned into a sharp sword, directly stabbing into the red whirlpool. The evil spirit was first enveloped by the primordial god silk, immediately halting its devouring ability. However, this time, the primordial god silk was unable to completely suppress the evil spirit's devouring ability. It only slowed down the evil spirit's devouring ability. Afterwards, when a second strand of primordial god silk stabbed into the evil spirit like a sword, it only caused the vortex to tremble violently a few times before recovering. Jinshin's heart sank when he saw this. Although there was still some power left in the primordial god silk, it was very clear that it was no longer enough to deal with the evil spirit. Even though the evil spirit had become much weaker, the threat that the primordial god silk posed to the evil spirit was nowhere near as great as when it was in perfect condition. Kikik, I'm not wrong. This thing that is specially used to restrain me has already been damaged. The damage it can do to me is not that great anymore. There is no need for me to be so afraid of it. My food. Let's see how long you can struggle. All of you will become my food. The evil spirit sent out a thought wave. Jinshin snorted coldly. Even though the primordial god silk doesn't pose much of a threat to you, don't forget that you still have me. As long as I'm alive, you can forget about recovering your strength. With that, the twin swords pierced through the evil spirit's body as two streaks of light, weakening the evil spirit's presence. Kikik, I am an undying existence. Apart from this thing that is specially used to restrain me, you food can't kill me at all. Even if I constantly weaken, I can still devour the essence of space to recover. My power is endless, while the power of you food is depleted. Once all of your power is depleted, it will be your fate to become my food. The evil spirit laughed aloud before escaping from the net of primordial god silk as a red mist. It quickly fled into the distance, and as it fled, the essence of the world constantly gathered toward it. Jinshin's face became ugly. After the primordial god silk was damaged, its power had weakened as well. There was not much left now, so it was unable to trap the evil spirit completely. Once the evil spirit recovered some of its strength, dealing with it would become extremely difficult. You want to recover your strength? Don't even think about it, Jinshin coldly said and immediately pursued it. Since a single piece of primordial god silk was not enough, he would use two pieces together. Under his control, the two pieces of primordial god silk formed a huge net that enveloped the evil spirit. Although the primordial god silk was unable to trap the evil spirit was unable to dodge the net formed from the primordial god silk. As a result, it was trapped once more. When the two pieces of primordial god silk were stacked together, their power immediately increased, but it was still unable to trap the evil spirit completely. It could only suppress the evil spirit's ability to devour, but it could only suppress half of it. It was unable to make the evil spirit completely lose its ability to devour. The evil spirit laughed strangely. It did not fight with Jinshin. It turned into a mist and fled again. It was just too weak right now, so it was unable to kill Jinshin if it fought with him. However, if it took on Jinshin's attacks, it would become even weaker. Right now, it only wanted to devour a large number of creatures. As long as it recovered some of its strength, it was confident in killing Jinshin. Chapter 16:23. Jinshin pursued closely. Although the primordial god silk was no longer enough to trap the evil spirit, the two strands of primordial god silk remained firmly wrapped around the evil spirit under Jinshin's control. The two strands moved with the evil spirit. Wherever the evil spirit moved, the two strands would follow. They stuck to the evil spirit like maggots, suppressing the evil spirit's ability to devour, preventing it from using its full strength. Jinshin constantly attacked the evil spirit with the azulate swords. The swords shone with dazzling light, piercing through the evil spirit from time to time with devastating might. Each time the swords passed through the evil spirit, it would become much weaker. Food. You bunch of food. You can't kill me. I'm an undying existence. All of your struggles are for nothing. The evil spirit furiously roared out. It did not fight with Jinshin. Instead, it fled as quickly as it could. Its speed suddenly skyrocketed, crossing several thousand kilometers in a flash. It was like teleportation. As the evil spirit fled at full speed, space seemed to fold before it, giving it the ability to teleport. Every time it passed through a folded space, it would cross several thousand kilometers or even several tens of thousands of kilometers. To no surprise, the place it fled towards was where the presence of life was the densest. Food. I need to devour a large amount of food. As long as I recover some of my strength, there's no need for me to fear him. I can even devour him, thought the evil spirit. The evil spirit thought. As it fled, it just happened to pass by a city. The city had already reached the first grade, with a population of several million. The cultivators who lived there were quite weak, with the strongest only being an Earth Saint Master. The evil spirit's fleeing speed did not stop, only slowing down slightly. When its body that had turned into red mist passed over the city that had a population of several million, a terrifying suction force immediately appeared, enveloping the entire city. In the next moment, several million strands of life aura gathered into a long river that surged into the sky from below. They were all absorbed by the evil spirit. As the city was not large, only several tens of thousands square kilometers in size, the evil spirit's ability to devour was limited. However, due to the shrinking range of the devouring force, it did not weaken at all. Instead, it became slightly stronger. In a single moment, it devoured all the vitality of the several million people in the city, turning the bustling city into a ghost town. The time it took to devour the city was less than a few seconds. The evil spirit did not stop at all, continuing to the next city. After the evil spirit left, another 2 breaths of time passed. A resplendent purple light streaked across the sky like a meteor. It swept past the sky above the city like a bolt of lightning and instantly disappeared at the end of the horizon, directly chasing after the evil spirit. Jinshin's face became terrifyingly sunken within the violet light. The senses of his soul were now powerful enough to envelop the entire planet, so he obviously saw everything that had happened in the city he had passed by earlier. Killing intent surged within him. Several million people had actually lost all their vitality in a single moment, dying. The culprit behind all of this was the fleeing evil spirit. Unfortunately, the evil spirit had made up its mind to flee. It even used its ability to move through space. Space seemed to fold before it, allowing it to move extremely quickly. For a moment, Jinshin was unable to catch up to it. As the pursuit continued, they passed by over a dozen cities very soon. Without any exception, every city they passed by would lead to a devastating disaster. All the people in the city had their vitality devoured by the evil spirit in a single moment. After devouring so much vitality, the evil spirit's strength gradually began to recover. Its presence gradually strengthened as well. Behind them, Jinshin was stern. He growled, "We can't just let the evil power continue to devour. We need to stop it with everything we have. Everyone, disperse in front of the evil power. Once you come across it, use your full strength to keep it busy. As long as you can keep it busy for a while, I'll be able to come to your assistance." Jinshin's voice rang out in the ears of all the sainthood and origin realm experts in the 2 worlds. Immediately, all of them fell into formation. While the space in front of the evil spirit was still unaffected, they constructed space gates and arrived in the path the evil spirit had to pass through. They formed a huge encirclement in an attempt to keep the evil spirit busy for a while. Everyone's expression was extremely solemn. This was because they knew that their strength would decrease if they were scattered like this. Against such a powerful evil spirit, they might not even last for a few seconds before becoming food. However, they had no other choice now. Although a portion of them would be devoured by the evil spirit before Jinshin could arrive, they still had a sliver of hope at keeping the evil spirit busy. If they did not do this, only death would await them once the evil spirit recovered to a certain extent. The evil spirit sensed their actions as well. It did not change its direction and let out a strange laugh. It directly charged towards the group with the fewest people. The weakest among them were sainthood experts, so their vitality was countless times greater than ordinary people's. It could recover some of its strength by devouring them. Oh no, it's heading in our direction. Everyone, be careful. You have to use your full strength, or we won't be able to last for a few seconds. A holy emperor growled from the group of sainthood experts. Without any hesitation, he immediately unleashed his full strength, pushing the formation to its limits to fend off the evil spirit. Behind this group of people, there were 4 old men with metal swords hovering there. Their expressions were also extremely solemn, and their bodies gave off a surging sword aura. Sword formation of slaying. One of the old men growled. Before he had even finished speaking, the 4 of them had already formed a sword formation with great familiarity. They radiated with supreme power. The 4 of them were clearly only as strong as holy emperors, but the receival experts felt extremely threatened as soon as they formed the sword formation. Sword formation of slaying. The 4 old men shouted in unison. Their voices rolled out and reverberated in the surroundings. Immediately, an extremely powerful sword intent expanded. The 4 old men shone with resplendent sword light. The 4 of them merged into one and formed a huge divine sword. It shot towards the red mist formed by the evil spirit with lightning speed. The 4 old men were Ada and his brothers. Although the 4 brothers' sword formation was enough to threaten Origin Realm experts and even kill receival experts, the evil spirit clearly did not take them seriously. The evil spirit directly threw a punch, and a fist condensed from red mist collided with the 4 brothers with devastating power. Amidst the booming sounds, the fairy slaying sword formation formed by the 4 brothers collapsed. The 4 brothers all spat out a mouthful of blood as they were sent flying backwards. It was not because the sword formation was not powerful enough, but because the difference in strength between the 4 of them and the evil spirit was just too great. When the evil spirit's fist, which was condensed from thick fog, came into contact with the immortal slaying sword chi, a small part of the fist actually crumbled. What kind of power is this? It's clearly so weak, but it's actually able to threaten me slightly. The evil spirit cried out in surprise. It could sense that the sword chi was extraordinary, but did not think too much about it. It immediately turned into a red mist that enveloped the 4 brothers and the sainthood experts who tried to stop it. It began to devour their vitality as quickly as possible. Chapter 16:24. Wrinkles rapidly appeared on the faces of the 4 brothers at that moment. Although they originally possessed the appearance of old men, they had white hair and ruddy complexions before. They seemed to be in their 60s or 70s, but their skin was as white as a child's. However, as their life force was rapidly devoured, the 4 of them began to age as well. Even their silver-white hair had become gray. As their life force and vital energies flowed away, they became even thinner. 4 swords as one. The 4 brothers called out together. Their presences suddenly changed as well. Powerful sword chi erupted from their bodies as the 4 metal swords in their hands shone with a deep, white light. As the light flickered, the 4 swords seemed to have fused together, erupting with supreme sword chi that completely exceeded their own strength to resist the terrifying devouring power. As the 4 brothers resisted with their full strength, the rate at which their life force flowed away immediately slowed down drastically. The sword formation the 4 of them cast together was far more powerful than the formation created by several dozen holy emperors. Nearby, there was another group of sainthood experts that had also been enveloped by the red mist. Although there were several hundred of them, most of them were saint rulers and holy emperors. The holy emperors did not possess a high level of cultivation, so even though they had cast down a formation together, they still struggled to endure the terrifying, devouring power of the evil spirit. In just a few seconds, All the saint rulers in the group had died. Even more than half of the weaker holy emperors had their life force and vital energies sucked away. The few remaining holy emperors all reached the end of their lives. They all became extremely old as their presences rapidly weakened. On the other hand, after the evil spirit absorbed the life force, its strength slowly recovered. This caused its aura to continue to strengthen. High up in the sky, the space violently shook as a terrifying pressure crushed down. The two Origin Realm experts charged down with the God-slaying formation under their control. The God-slaying formation shone with a hazy light, directly enveloping the evil spirit below. At the same time, Shangwanmu sat in the air as she played her zither. She used her music to disturb the evil spirit. She was stern and focused. As her slender fingers gently plucked the strings, the music directly entered the evil spirit's soul with unstoppable might. The space behind her distorted violently as 36 spatial ripples appeared. Each ripple was 10,000 kilometers long. Traversing the entire world, a total of 36 spatial ripples seemed to form a zither of the demonic cry that was completely constructed from the void. However, only 12 of the 36 strings were vibrating. A powerful sword chi expanded from outer space. The Spirit King hurried toward the Tian Yuan continent with a pale face. Although he had paid an extremely heavy price to forcefully use the second move of a will that splits the heavens, causing him to be extremely weak, the presence he gave off was still earth-shaking. It possessed the power to destroy the world. Behind the evil spirit, a violet streak of light shot through the air at an unbelievable speed. It charged toward the evil spirit with surging, killing intent. However, Jianshun was just too far away from the evil spirit. So even if Jianshun hurried over as quickly as he could, he would still need a few seconds to arrive. However, a few seconds was enough for experts at their level to do many things. The evil spirit knew that once Jianshun and the Spirit King caught up to it, they would still be unable to kill it, but all the energy it had absorbed as it fled would be for naught. It immediately stopped hesitating and began to devour as quickly as it could. In just half a second, all the sainthood experts had died aside from the four brothers. Even the Holy Emperor's energy had been devoured. The four brothers used the sword formation to hold on, but they clearly could not last much longer. The evil spirit was just too powerful. Even with the extraordinary sword formation, they were unable to defy the heavens with their Holy Emperor's strength at the 9th heavenly layer. They had already reached the end of their rope. The four brothers had wanted to charge out of the red mist, but the mist was condensed from the evil spirit's body. Being enveloped by the mist was no different from entering the evil spirit's body. When Jianshun used the linear lightning release in the past, he was unable to charge out even with the speed of the linear lightning release, let alone the four brothers. As a result, the four brothers could only passively resist the red mist. They were unable to escape it all. The god-slaying formation rapidly fell from above the evil spirit's head, but due to the distance between them, it still needed a few seconds before it could reach the evil spirit. The evil spirit looked at the four brothers and laughed strangely. It said, "The four of you may be very weak, but my instincts tell me that you're very different from other food. It seems like devouring the four of you will benefit me tremendously. Hee, those two food that can threaten me will still need some time to hurry over and save the four of you. This amount of time is enough for me to devour the four of you. I'm looking forward to seeing just what benefits I'll get from devouring you." The evil spirit's voice was filled with intense desire. Without any hesitation, it began to devour the four brothers with all its might. It could ignore the god-slaying formation, but it needed to pay attention to Jianshun and the Spirit King. As a result, it needed to devour the four brothers before Jianshun and the Spirit King arrived. The evil spirits began to target the four brothers with their full strength. Even though the four of them formed a powerful sword formation to block, they were unable to last for long. In just a few seconds, 99% of their vitality and vital energies had been drained away. Their flames of life dimmed, as if they could be extinguished at any moment. Their sword formation collapsed by itself as well. Jinshin and the Spirit King are about to arrive. We can die without any regrets now that we've been able to keep you busy for so long." The four brothers smiled. They did not fear death. Instead, they faced it calmly. Behind them, Jinshin's eyes suddenly narrowed as he hurried over. He suddenly stared at his right arm. When he had taken over the Inata Tower, he had received assistance from the 4 strands of sword chi on the top floor. It was exactly because of the 4 strands of sword chi that he had been able to kill the spirit of the Inata Tower and enter the 9th floor, where he obtained the treasures. After using the 4 strands of sword chi several times, their power had not completely dissipated. However, they could only be used against receival experts. To Jinshin, the 4 strands of sword chi that remained in his arm were no longer of any use. After all, with his current strength, any casual strike could reach the level of reciprocity. If he used his full strength, his battle prowess would reach godhood. The 4 strands of sword chi could not compare to him, so he did not pay much attention to them. However, at this moment, Jinshin clearly sensed that the 4 strands of sword chi in his arm had suddenly begun to tremble. It was as if the 4 strands of sword chi possessed a mind of their own, awakening from their slumber. Without giving Jinshin any time to think, the 4 strands of sword chi all appeared from Jinshin's arm. They turned into white streaks of light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Jinshin was immediately surprised by this. This was because he had failed to sense where the 4 strands of sword chi had gone with his current strength. It was as if they had vanished into thin air, leaving no traces behind. A ball of white light suddenly appeared before the 4 brothers trapped in the red mist. The 4 strands of sword chi that had vanished earlier had silently entered the mist, appearing before the 4 brothers' foreheads, as if they had teleported. Afterward, they turned into 4 streaks of light and shot into the foreheads of the 4 brothers without any hesitation. The flames of life that were about to be extinguished all came to a halt when the 4 strands of sword chi entered their foreheads. Not only did they slow down, but they even began to rapidly expand at an extremely terrifying rate. Their presences suddenly skyrocketed at that moment, reaching their peak condition in just a short moment. However, this did not stop. Their presences continued to skyrocket, far surpassing their peak condition. They had surpassed the level of the Holy Emperor and reached the origin realm. The 4 brothers opened their eyes again. There was no weakness in their eyes at all. Instead, they were brimming with vigor, as sharp as swords. The 4 brothers had broken through the 9th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor in a single moment with the fusion of the 4 strands of sword chi. They had officially reached the origin realm, becoming origin realm sovereigns. How is this possible? How is this possible? You're about to be devoured by me. You're about to run out of life. So how have you become so much more powerful? The evil spirit's shocked mental pulses echoed through the red mist. He was just too surprised that the 4 brothers had actually reached the origin realm under such circumstances. Even if you all have become stronger, so what? I can still devour you all. This time, even if my vitality is greatly damaged, I will still devour you all. My intuition is definitely not wrong. As long as I devour you all, I will be able to obtain enormous benefits, said the evil spirit, revealing a sense of determination. The 4 brothers looked at each other and saw a smear of shock in each other's eyes. This was because several extremely unfamiliar sword techniques had appeared in their heads at this moment. Every single one of them possessed unfathomable power and was extremely powerful. Moreover, they were very compatible with the cultivation method they practiced. Chapter 16:25 Sword of Mortality. Suddenly, a sea bellowed out. As he formed a sword seal with his hands, the metal sword in his hand levitated into the air and erupted with powerful sword chi. Immediately, the metal sword shone with blinding light, as if it had become a scorching sun. The metal sword that was only a meter long also expanded at that moment, becoming over 10 meters long. It seemed like a divine sword that stabbed into the ground. Sword of Reincarnation. At this moment, Sin also bellowed out like a sea. As he formed a sword seal with his hands, the metal sword in his hand shone brightly as well. It shone with extremely powerful sword chi, and the metal sword instantly grew to over 10 meters long. Sword of Slaying. Immediately afterwards, a air did the same as a sea and a sand. The 4-foot-long metal swords in their hands all changed as they used their sword techniques. The 3 10-meter-long metal swords shone with a dazzling light like the sun. They were incomparably resplendent as they interweaved in a triangular formation. It was as if they were calling out to each other from afar, causing their power to faintly fuse into one. A air, i.e. sand, and a sea were also enveloped by an extremely powerful sword chi, causing their figures to become blurry. However, it was possible to vaguely make out a blurry strand of sword chi that flickered from time to time within their bodies. It possessed a profound presence. The 3 strands of sword chi seemed to possess similar presences, but upon closer inspection, it was not difficult to distinguish the 3 strands of sword chi. They all had their own forms and were subtly different. Every single strand of sword chi possessed an extremely profound presence. However, the presence was extremely weak and indistinct, so it was extremely difficult for others to sense it. I can't actually devour your life force anymore. Impossible, impossible. You're just food as weak as ants. So how can I not devour you? The evil spirit cried out in shock. At that moment, it discovered in shock that it was unable to devour the life force of a air, a sand, and a sea under the 3 strands of sword chi even when it used its full strength. At the same time, it sensed a threat from the 3 of them. The threat was nowhere near as great as the one from Jianshan and the Spirit King, but for some reason, it made it shiver in fear. It had to be mentioned that it had never felt this way even when it faced the primordial god Silk. My instincts are becoming stronger and stronger. As long as I devour you, I'll receive great benefits. Opportunity and danger exist together. Who cares? I'm undying anyway. Even if I have to pay a great price, I'll devour you. However, the evil spirit completely ignored the threat it sensed from an air, a sand, and a sand. It made up its mind to devour the 4 of them regardless of the price it had to pay. The evil spirit's red mist immediately began to revolve rapidly, forming a huge whirlpool that enveloped the 4 of them. Immediately, an even more powerful suction appeared. At the same time, the red mist transformed into 4 huge claws that reached toward the 4 of them in an attempt to destroy the protective light around the 3 of them. Sort of vanquishing. When the sharp claws formed by Hong Wu reached over, Ada let out a final roar. He flew above the heads of the other 3 and stood in the middle of them. He raised his right hand above his head and pointed his sword at the sky, forming a sword formation. Immediately, a air, a sand, and a sea's powers all gathered toward Ada. At that moment, the 4 of them entered an extremely special state. Not only had their powers completely fused together, but even their vital energies and the tremendous vitality they had gained from breaking through to the origin realm had all fused together as well, allowing them to become even more powerful. Initial fusion of the 4 swords reopened the world. The 4 of them called out together as they swung their metal swords at the same time. The moment the 4 swords slashed down, the world seemed to have come to a standstill. Time seemed to have stopped flowing. In the entire world, only the 4 swords continued to slash forward with an unstoppable momentum, becoming the only thing in the world. As the 4 swords slashed down, even the laws of the world were pushed back. It was as if the 4 swords had the mysterious power to slash apart the laws of the world at this moment. This was not because the 4 swords were powerful or shocking. After all, the 4 of them had only just broken through to receival. With their strength at early receival, it was impossible for them to reach a heaven-defying level even if they fused their powers together. The reason why their attacks were so powerful was because of the presence of ways within the 4 swords. As the 4 swords swung down, the expressions of Jianshan, the Spirit King, and even the several dozen origin realm experts in the sky changed slightly. This was because they could clearly sense that the world seemed to have changed slightly. However, what shocked them even more was that they could clearly sense that the time in the world seemed to have come to a standstill. Even though it was only for a single moment, it was enough to shock all of them. In particular, Jianshun and the Spirit King, the two sovereigns who had reached godhood, felt their hearts churn. Disbelief filled their faces. Just like how the higher one stood, the further one could see. The two of them understood extremely well just how heaven-defying it was to affect the time in the world. It was impossible to do unless one was extremely powerful. Even with their current strength, it was impossible for them to cause the time in the world to come to a standstill for a single moment. This was because they had not frozen space. Freezing space would cause everything to come to a standstill. On the surface, it seemed like time had come to a standstill, but it was not truly a standstill. It was just an illusion. In reality, if they were to seal up an entire region and cause everything to come to a standstill, time would still silently flow and the laws of the world would still silently circulate. However, in that moment, time had truly come to a standstill. Even though it was only for a very short moment, they could clearly sense it. This is the presence of the Nirvana sword formation. Impossible. This is impossible. How can the four of them use such a high-level sword formation? And with their strength, it's impossible for them to use it even if they do. Not only did they succeed in one try, but they did it so quickly as well. Xing and Qing saw both cried out from within the twin swords. In the supreme divine hall of Mercenary City, the white-robed Kea lay in a crystal coffin quietly with her eyes closed. Suddenly, her eyelashes trembled gently, as if she was trying her best to open her eyes, but she was unable to do so no matter what. In the end, she fell silent once again. A fist-sized beast lay beside the crystal coffin. It was the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast. It had always stood guard before the crystal coffin in the past few years, never taking a single step away from it. Even when a great battle occurred outside, it did not take part. At this moment, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast's eyes suddenly snapped open. They flickered with an intelligent light, indicating that it possessed very high intelligence. It stared at the outside as it became stern. There was also a sliver of fear and dread. As a divine beast, its instincts were extremely sharp. It felt a sliver of dread from the bottom of its heart when an ability that could affect the time of an entire world erupted outside. The elven god tree suddenly began to gently sway in the forbidden grounds of the elves on the wasteland continent. A faint, green light permeated the surroundings, filled with a tremendous presence of life. The slumbering soul of the greatest divine king of the god clan, Aladona, was suddenly roused at that moment. Who was affecting the time of the entire world? Aladona's voice was also filled with shock. The senses of her soul rapidly expanded, enveloping the entire world in a single instance. She understood everything. An evil spirit. I never thought that an evil spirit would be born in this world. Who are those four people? They're actually able to use such a heaven-defying ability as receival experts? This is unbelievable. Although they can affect the time of an entire world through powerful abilities, the more powerful the ability, the greater the requirement on the user's strength. Chapter 16:26. Adriana murmured softly. She became very interested in Ada and the other three. But I might be wrong as well. The four of them might not be the reincarnations of some supreme expert from the saints' world like I thought them to be. The reason why they can use such heaven-defying abilities might be because they have something else to rely on, Jinshin's side. Aladona's interest in the four of them immediately plummeted when she thought of that. I never thought that this human kid called Jinshin would grow so quickly. His current strength is probably equivalent to early deity. I can sense that his comprehension of laws is quite impressive. In the saint world, countless people of the origin realm are stuck at the peak of reciprocity, unable to reach godhood because of their inability to comprehend laws. Even with the entire saint's world in perspective, anyone who can comprehend laws before reaching peak reciprocity is a prodigy, but basically all prodigies of large clans and sects who can reach Jinshin's level of comprehension of laws before reaching peak reciprocity are prodigies of large clans and sections. Once someone like that becomes a divine king, they'll definitely become a divine king if nothing goes wrong. If Jinshin doesn't die, His future is limitless. Aladona sighed in amazement inside. She had an extremely high opinion of Jianshun. There's another person who's extraordinary as well. He's no weaker than Jianshun, except he seems to have the bloodline of the Spirit Sages. The Spirit Sages are a large clan in the Saints' world, but now. Aladona sighed gently. It's said that evil spirits are extremely difficult to destroy. They're basically indestructible existences. It's said that countless years ago, an evil spirit reached an extremely heaven-defying level where several Grand Primes were unable to deal with it even when they worked together. In the end, they alarmed the Inata Grand Prime. Although the evil spirit was nowhere near the Inata Grand Prime's opponent, the Inata Grand Prime still expended a tremendous amount of effort to destroy the evil spirit. I wonder if they can destroy the evil spirit that has appeared in this world right now. It's a pity that even though I'm the greatest divine king of the God clan, I'm unable to help them in my current state. Fortunately, Shui Yunlan has already left, and the seal on the spatial tunnel to the Saints' world has been removed. Although I'm still unable to pass through the spatial tunnel to the Saints' world unscathed with my current strength, if they can't stop the evil spirit, I'll leave with the war god, even if I have to suffer heavy injuries. Aladona remained rooted in the forbidden grounds of the elves. Although she did not take part in the battle, she paid close attention to everything that happened on the battlefield. When the senses of Aladona's soul swept over the Tian Yuan continent, Jianshun and the Spirit King seemed to sense it at the same time. Jianshun was not surprised. He already knew about the existence of Aladona, the greatest divine king of the God clan. However, the Spirit King was surprised. He stared in the direction of the elves on the wasteland continent, in interest, as undisguised shock filled his face. He knew very well just how powerful the consciousness that had just swept over him was. It was just a consciousness, but it made him feel like he was facing the heavens and earth. In front of this consciousness, he was like a weak ant. Jianshun, I believe you sensed it as well. Who is it? I never thought that such a terrifying expert would be hidden in this world. The Spirit King asked Jianshun secretly. He was extremely stern. It's a divine king from a saint's world. However, she was heavily injured in the past and still hasn't recovered. Don't worry about her. She won't interfere with the matters of this world. At the same time, she probably doesn't even have the strength to interfere with the problems we're facing right now, because she's already lost her body. All that's left is her soul and the divine tree of life condensed from tremendous vitality, Jianshun replied. A divine king. The Spirit King's face changed slightly. He immediately felt his mouth dry up. The divine king was an existence who had reached the very apex of godhood. Although the Spirit King possessed the battle prowess of an early deity, his original cultivation was still at reciprocity. The divine king was just too far away from him. I never thought that your world would actually have a divine king hidden in it. This is unbelievable. The Spirit King sighed in amazement. Hearing that, Jianshun smiled mysteriously. We originally had 2 divine kings here. The other divine king is even more powerful. The divine king whose soul you've sensed was injured by the other divine king. It's a pity that the other divine king has already left this world and has gone to the saints' world. The Spirit King sucked in a deep breath. Jianshun's news was just too shocking to him. It was no different from a bomb exploding in his heart, causing it to churn. Whether it was the Spirit King or Jianshun, the divine king was an unreachable existence. They were so powerful that they could not be defeated. Even if only one of them was left with a soul, it would be enough to shock everyone, let alone the fact that there was a second divine king. Moreover, the second divine king was even more powerful, which deeply shocked the Spirit King. Who are you? What kind of power is this? It's actually so terrifying. A slightly frightened mental pulse reverberated in the surroundings, reaching everyone's ears. At the same time, it interrupted Jianshun and the Spirit King's thoughts. The presence of the evil spirit that had turned into a huge whirlpool rapidly declined. Very soon, it fell to mid-reciprocity, early reciprocity, and then all the way down to reciprocity. However, the evil spirit did not stop there. After falling to reciprocity, its strength continued to decline irreversibly. It reached late returnance, mid-returnance, and finally stabilized at early returnance. Although the four of them were only at early receival, the sword formation they cast together was just too powerful. It directly reduced the evil spirit's strength from late reciprocity to early returnance. The evil spirit was originally extremely powerful. Even when Jinshin and the Spirit King worked together, they were not its opponent. However, the evil spirit's strength was nowhere near as great as before due to the continuous injuries it had suffered throughout the battle. This was because the red mist was its original form. Every bit of the mist dispersed would weaken it. The four of them had dispersed most of the mist with their attacks, which was why its strength had plummeted so drastically. The four of them all became extremely pale after casting the powerful sword formation. They were haggard and seemed extremely weak. Clearly, they had paid a price to cast the sword formation. Chapter 16:27. This was because as its strength declined, it would struggle to move faster than Jinshin and the Spirit King even if it used its ability to fold space to flee. The distance it could travel was directly related to its strength. Jinshin, it's up to you now, Ada said to Jinshin through a communication technique. His voice was extremely weak. He was powerless to continue fighting. A gleam of light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. He shot through the air as a blur, arriving before the evil spirit with lightning speed. He directly stabbed at the red mist. Only resplendent, white sword chi flickered with the strike. The sword chi was completely concealed, not leaking out at all to avoid damaging the Tianyuan continent from the shockwaves. The azure and violet light had completely vanished as well. Jinshin could sense that Adriana's soul had always been observing the surroundings. In order to prevent the identity of the twin swords from being exposed, the unique light of the twin swords was completely concealed as well. Not a single strand of light leaked out. Although he knew that not every divine king knew the identity of the twin swords, he still needed to be cautious. The Ziying sword stabbed into the red mist with powerful sword chi, immediately causing the mist to churn violently. Jinshin's strike was not his full strength, but it had barely reached the level of godhood. Wherever the sword passed, the red mist in the surroundings would disperse, and the evil spirit's strength would decline once again, falling from early returnance to receival. When the evil spirit's strength was close to Jinshin's, or even greater than Jinshin's attacks would not be able to inflict any heavy injuries on it. With its strength, it would be able to endure them easily. However, as the evil spirit's strength rapidly declined, it gradually found it more and more difficult to endure Jinshin's attacks. Basically, every time Jinshin struck out, he would heavily injure the evil spirit, causing its strength to rapidly decline. At the same time, the god-slaying formation finally arrived. It rapidly descended from the sky and enveloped the evil spirit, heavily injuring it with god-slaying sword chi. The Spirit King returned from outer space as well. He and Jinshin each took up a different area and began to deal with the evil spirits with their full strength. However, the two of them were just too powerful right now. They could attack without any fear in outer space, but on the Tianyuan continent, they had to be careful every time they attacked in order to avoid causing great damage to the continent. They kept all of their energy contained. They did not dare to leak even a single strand of their energy. Under the encirclement, the evil spirit was unable to devour the four of them at all. At the same time, its strength weakened time and time again under the encirclement. In the end, it actually fell out of the origin realm and stood its sainthood. Jinshin charged into the red mist, as well, and saved the four people trapped inside, saving them from danger. You food can't kill me. I'm undying. No one can kill me. The evil spirit roared. The evil spirit roared out wildly. After falling below Saint, it no longer had any hope of escaping. However, it was filled with resentment. If it were not for the fact that it wanted to devour the four of them in a hurry to obtain great benefits, it would not have ended up like this. Not only did it fail to devour them in a crucial moment, but the four of them even managed to break through. Remove the god-slaying formation. Let me and the Spirit King deal with it, Jianshun said sternly. The evil spirit was equivalent to a sane emperor now, so there was no need for the god-slaying formation anymore. If the formation continued to exist, it would even cause him and the Spirit King to feel rather restricted. Without any hesitation, the origin realm experts of the two worlds immediately removed the god-slaying formation. As soon as the formation vanished, Jianshin immediately controlled the primordial god silkworm to trap the evil spirit, preventing it from escaping. The red mist of the evil spirit constantly darted around within the primordial god silkworm in an attempt to escape. However, it no longer possessed the ability to break free from the primordial god silkworm. Under the full-powered attacks of Jianshin and the Spirit King, its strength plummeted again very quickly, falling to the mortal realm. The red mist vanished as well, revealing the evil spirit's core. It was a ball of red liquid the size of a fist. It was as demonic as blood and emitted an extremely cold and evil aura. This was the source of the evil spirit. Only by destroying this source would the evil spirit be truly destroyed. Jianshin directly swung his sword at the core of the evil spirit through a gap in the primordial god silkworm. The sword passed through the core. Not only did it fail to cut the core in half, but it did not weaken the core at all either. It was as if the attack had failed to harm the core at all. Jianshin's eyes narrowed when he saw this. The Spirit King's face changed slightly as well. He also swung his sword, but the result was the same as Jianshin's. The Cloudstream sword passed through the core and failed to harm the evil spirit's core. You can't kill me. I am an undying existence. A thought rippled out from the origin source, along with the evil spirit's arrogant laughter. There was some mockery mixed in as well, as if it was mocking the experts who were only food in its eyes for overestimating their strength. Jianshin's face sank. With a cold snort, he used martial soul force with his soul at reciprocity. Immediately, a unique power completely formed from the power of the soul appeared. The power was shapeless and did not harm the body. It targeted the soul, and under Jianshin's control, it shot toward the evil spirit as a sharp sword. Although Jianshin had yet to comprehend a method to push the power of martial soul force to its limits, his soul had reached reciprocity after all. As a result, a unique pressure immediately permeated the surroundings when he used martial soul force. The expressions of the origin realm experts of the two worlds all changed when they faced the pressure. At that moment, they discovered in shock that their souls had been suppressed by the invisible pressure. Even though the pressure did not target them, basically all the receival experts among them could clearly sense the deep fear from their souls. It was as if the pressure was directed at them, their souls would immediately suffer unprecedented damage or even disperse slightly. The pressure threatened all the receival experts present. Only the returnance experts were able to maintain their composure. Of course, if the pressure was targeted at them, they would feel the same as the receival experts. Martial soul force was an extremely powerful power, so powerful that it was enough to strike fear into the hearts of many people in the Saints' world. This was because once martial soul force was used, it could basically kill experts of the same level instantly. Even experts more powerful than them would be heavily injured by martial soul force. However, Jianshin had yet to grasp the method to use martial soul force, so he was unable to push it to its limits. As a result, martial soul force could only threaten people weaker than him with the strength of his soul at reciprocity. Chapter 1628. Although the evil spirit had its own consciousness, it was not a normal creature after all. It was an extremely special existence where the laws of the world could not do anything to it. Destroying it was impossible with normal methods. The weakened evil spirit had completely lost its ability to escape. It was firmly trapped by the primordial god Silk. Afterwards, Jianshin and the Spirit King tried many other methods to destroy the evil spirit, but the evil spirit's core seemed to be as it said. It was an undying existence. No matter what attacks Jianshin and the Spirit King used, they could only disperse the evil spirit's energy. They were unable to harm its core. Master, It said that only the primordial god Silk can nullify the crisis of the world. If you want to destroy it, you'll need the primordial god Silk's power. At this moment, the sword spirit's voices rang out in Jinshin's head. Jinshin immediately felt bitter. He had considered using the primordial god Silk to destroy the evil spirit long ago. But now that the primordial god Silk had been split into two, the power within it had basically been depleted. The remaining bit of power was only enough to trap the evil spirit. It was nowhere near enough to destroy it. He had also tried channeling his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, but the effects were not satisfactory. Even if he channeled all his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, it was nowhere near enough to destroy the evil spirit. According to his estimates, even if the Spirit King, all the Origin Realm experts of the two worlds, and all the Sainthood experts worked together, they would not be able to destroy the evil spirit. The power of divinity was an extremely special type of energy. It was of a very high grade. Saint Force and Origin energy seemed far too weak before it, so the amount required to convert it into divinity was obviously extremely terrifying. Is it really impossible to kill the evil spirit? Jinshin murmured. His heart was very heavy. The Spirit King's face was sunken as well. He stared fixedly at the origin of the evil spirit trapped by the primordial god Silk. He also discovered that they were unable to do anything to the evil spirit. Since I can't destroy it, it looks like I can only suppress this evil spirit forever. I'll find a way to destroy it once I become stronger in the future. I'll seal in the Inata Tower with the primordial god Silk, so it should be safe. Jinshin thought. Right now, the greatest divine king of the god clan, Aladona, was paying attention. He really did not want to expose the Inata Tower at a time like this. After all, the Inata Tower was what had made the Inata Grand Prime famous. Its power was unquestionable. Even though it was damaged, he believed that there would be countless experts in the Saints world who would be willing to risk their lives for the Inata Tower, regardless of the cost. Once Aladona leaked the fact that he possessed the Inata Tower in the Saints world, he would never be able to find peace again. However, the remaining power of the primordial god Silk was diminishing right now. It could only trap the evil spirit for a shorter and shorter period of time. He needed to suppress the evil spirit before the primordial god Silk ran out of power. Jinshin had no confidence in using the methods of the Tian Yuan continent and the Saint world. He could only think of two places to suppress the evil spirit. One was the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City, while the other was the Inata Tower. Although the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was in perfect condition, it was nowhere near as good as the damaged Inata Tower in terms of quality. Jinshin was not too confident about using the Supreme Divine Hall as a place to suppress the evil spirit. He was afraid that even the Supreme Divine Hall would not be able to trap the evil spirit, so the most suitable method was the Inata Tower. After making up his mind, Jinshin no longer cared about whether the Inata Tower would be exposed or not. He directly took out the Inata Tower in an attempt to suppress the evil spirit within. The Inata Tower was a foot tall in Jinshin's hand. Even though it had shrunk in size, the strands of sharp sword chi that covered it remained. Every single strand of sword chi shone brightly, radiating with shocking sword intent. However, there were 4 strands of sword chi at the very top of the Inata Tower that were dim. They seemed rather unique compared to the dazzling sword chi below. The moment the Inata Tower appeared, the 4 brothers who were supported by the Holy Emperor seemed to sense something. They all looked at the Inata Tower in Jinshin's hand, and their dull eyes immediately lit up. Without any exception, all 4 of them stared at the dim sword slashes at the very top of the Inata Tower. Their eyes were all in a daze. A mysterious force seemed to draw them in from there. At the same time, the 4 of them found it to be extremely familiar, yet also unfamiliar. The damaged door to the first floor of the Inata Tower had already been opened. A powerful suction enveloped the evil spirit, pulling away from its core and drawing it towards the Inata Tower. The evil spirit's core trembled violently as it did its best to resist the suction. It had an extremely ill omen. It could not be sucked into the Inata Tower. Although the Inata tower was damaged, it still felt terrified when it faced it. However, it was just far too weak right now. It was unable to resist Jinshin's Inata tower at all. Under the restraints of the primordial god Silk, its core approached the Inata tower bit by bit. My food, you forced me to do this. Come out, my second power. Make the food tremble. Tremble. The evil spirit roared out anxiously. It was filled with determination. With its voice, an extremely huge spatial crack suddenly appeared in outer space. Inside the crack was a blood-red world that shone with a demonic red light. There was also a cold, extremely evil presence that came from the same source as the evil spirit. Jian Shun and the Spirit King's faces changed drastically when they saw this. Disbelief filled their eyes. With their eyesight, they could obviously tell that all the energy hidden in the spatial crack was the evil spirit's energy, and the energy was so powerful that it was comparable to the evil spirit's peak condition. This is impossible. Jinshin and the Spirit King became rather pale. All the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts of the two worlds were filled with despair as well. At its peak condition, the evil spirit was so powerful that it was undefeatable. If it were not for the fact that it had destroyed the primordial god Silk by blowing itself up and causing its strength to plummet, it would have been impossible for Jinshin and the Spirit King to suppress the evil spirit. Just when they were about to suppress the evil spirit and achieve victory, they never thought that the evil spirit would still be hiding such a powerful force. Despair filled both Jinshin and the Spirit King's hearts. Once the evil spirit regained its peak condition, they would not be able to contend against it anymore. After all, the primordial god Silk had basically been crippled, and the Spirit King had paid a heavy price to use the second move of a will that splits the heavens. He was unable to unleash his peak condition. We can't let this energy descend. A sliver of determination and madness appeared in Jinshin's eyes. He frantically powered the Inata tower without any regard for the consequences. He wanted to suck the evil spirit into the tower. However, ever since the spatial crack had appeared, the evil spirit seemed to have become connected with the tremendous energy inside. Jinshin was unable to suck the evil spirit into the Inata tower, no matter what he did. It was as if he was not only absorbing the evil spirit's core energy, but also the tremendous, evil energy within the spatial crack. It was not that the Inata tower was not powerful enough, but that he was not powerful enough. After all, the energy within the spatial crack was far greater than Jinshin's strength. I've absorbed the energy from the two rocks, but I'm still unable to fuse them completely. At the same time, I'm unable to control two such great powers at the same time with the strength of my consciousness. Chapter 16:29. Whether it was the people from a world of forsaken saints or the Tian Yuan continent, whether they were sainthood experts or origin realm experts, all became rather pale with the evil spirit's words. There were even many people who became filled with despair. Even Jinshin and the Spirit King became extremely stern. Their sunken eyes were filled with shock, disbelief, and a sliver of despair. They had never thought that they would only be able to destroy half of the evil spirit's power after expending so much effort and paying such a great price. It actually had the other half, which it could not control right now. It had split off a portion of its power and hid it in a miniature world with a sliver of its soul. It was equivalent to a clone. However, the second portion of power was as powerful as the evil spirit's peak condition. Once the evil spirit fused with the second portion of power, it would return to its peak condition. Even if Jinshin and the Spirit King worked together, they would not be able to defeat the evil spirit in such a state. Not to mention, the primordial god Silk that specialized in suppressing evil spirits had basically lost its effects now. The primordial god Silk no longer posed any threat to the evil spirit as its power flowed away. Could it be that all of us are going to die under the great calamity of this world? Jinshin was filled with sorrow. His and the Spirit King's strength in this world had completely exceeded the limits of the lower world. They possessed the battle prowess of godhood. Logically speaking, it should have been extremely easy for them to fend off the crisis of the world with their strength and the primordial god Silk. However, the crisis this time had become unprecedentedly powerful due to the existence of the Yin-Yang Saint Rock. It had surpassed all the previous crises that had appeared in the lower world in countless years, which was why they were helpless against the crisis of the world. It still hasn't recovered its strength. We can't let it fuse with the other energy, or we'll have no hope at all. We have to stop it from fusing with the other energy, no matter the cost, the Spirit King growled. Stop it, Jinshin murmured. He looked at the huge crack in outer space and became extremely stern. Originally, he wanted to suck the evil spirit's core into the Enitak Tower to suppress it, but ever since the evil spirit's second portion of power had appeared in outer space, the evil spirit had established a wondrous connection with it. As a result, he was unable to suck the evil spirit into the Enitak Tower. We can't stop it anymore. The only thing we can do now is destroy the core of the crisis of the world before the two of them fuse, Jinshin said sternly. Destroy it? But we've done everything we can, and we can't even harm its core, let alone destroy it. The Spirit King was stern. Once the evil spirit fused with the second portion of power, it would not just be the Tianyuan continent that would be destroyed. Even the world of Forsaken Saints would not be spared. There's one last method. Even though it's still unable to destroy the core of the crisis of the world, we've already run out of options. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, we have to try the last method, even if it'll heavily injure its core, because we have no other choice now, Jinshin said sternly. Under the Spirit King's doubtful gaze, Jinshin controlled the primordial god silk with his mind. The primordial god silk that had trapped the core of the evil spirit suddenly elongated at that moment, before shooting off into the distance with unbelievable speed. It vanished into the horizon in a single instance. As it extended, the golden thread seemed to become the trunk of a tree. It constantly sprouted, and in just a few seconds, it seemed to have become an extremely huge net, enveloping the entire Tianyuan continent. However, it did not stop there. After enveloping the entire continent, it continued to spread toward the Sea Realm, the Beast God continent, and the Wasteland continent. In the end, even the continents of the three races were enveloped by the net. At that very moment, if one were to look at the planet from outer space, they would discover that the entire planet was covered by a layer of golden net. The net had practically filled every corner of the planet. It was completely airtight, especially in some of the more populated cities. The golden threads that formed the huge net even ran through every street and alley. However, after the primordial god silk had enveloped the entire world, the limited amount of power within it had completely vanished. It had been completely depleted, leaving nothing behind. The core of the evil spirit began to tremble at that moment. Now that the primordial god silk had been completely depleted, it posed no threat to the evil spirit at all. At this moment, determination filled Jinshin's eyes. He tightly grabbed a golden thread in front of him with his right hand, and the chaotic force within him began to surge. He poured it into the primordial god silk without holding back at all, where it was converted into power. Everyone, pour all your origin energy and saint force into the golden thread. This is the last thing we can do. Even if we can't destroy the crisis of the world, we have to heavily injure it. Even if we can't avoid death today, we have to make the crisis suffer before we die. Jinshin's voice boomed through the surroundings. Not only did it reverberate through the sky above the Tianyuan continent, but even the distant Beast God continent, the continent of the 100 races and the Sea Realm clearly echoed through the entire world. Many Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters on the Tianyuan continent raised their heads and gazed in the direction of the voice. They became extremely stern. A few of them who possessed some background already knew a few secrets. When they saw the golden thread that had basically enveloped the entire world, they realized that the situation on the front lines had probably reached an extremely terrible state. It was so terrible that they had to borrow the power of people who had not reached sainthood yet. At this moment, many people slowly grabbed the golden thread with heavy hearts. Without any hesitation, they poured all of their saint force into the golden thread without holding back at all. Of course, there were a few Heaven Saint Masters and Earth Saint Masters who had no idea what was going on. However, The booming voice seemed to possess an unquestionable will. They could not help but feel the urge to disobey when they heard the voice. They could not help but grab the golden thread and contribute all of their strength. Chapter 16:30. Among them, there were a few people with strong willpower who were not affected by Jian Chen's voice. There were also some people who stared blankly at the golden strands that had suddenly appeared in front of them, not knowing what to do. But soon after, a gentle sound of a zither rang out, and these people who had yet to make a move immediately became dazed. They then mechanically grabbed onto the golden strands with their hands and poured in their saint force without holding back. Not only did this happen across the Tian Yuan continent, but even the cultivators on the Wasteland continent, Beast God continent, Sea Realm, and many other islands contributed their own power. They channeled all of their power into the primordial god Silk, which was then rapidly converted into divine energy. In outer space, the large crack in space continued to expand. The evil power hidden within it turned into a blood cloud and slowly left the large crack. It slowly moved towards the evil spirit's source. At this rate, the evil spirit's source would probably merge with its second source of power in a few breaths' time. Fortunately, this second power was only controlled by a portion of the evil spirit's soul. This portion of the evil spirit's soul was still unable to use such a large amount of power to fight. Thus, this second power could only unleash its full power after fusing with the evil spirit's core. On the battlefield, all the sainthood experts and even the origin realm experts rapidly paled. They had already channeled their saint force and origin energy into the primordial god Silk as quickly as possible, so they became weaker and weaker as a large amount of energy was drained away. With the support of such a tremendous amount of energy, the primordial god Silk actually began to glow again. At the same time, as more and more saint force and origin energy were converted into divine force, the primordial god Silk shone with more and more resplendent light. It became more and more dazzling until it turned into a scorching sun that illuminated the entire world. No, why has this goddamn power appeared again? I hate this power. I hate this presence. My second power, hurry up and descend so that we can fuse together. The evil spirit's panicked and urgent voice rang out from the core. Although it was an undying existence in its core state, it was also in its weakest state. It could ignore everything Jianshin and the others could do, but it could not ignore the power of the primordial god Silk. The power just happened to be able to harm its core that was known to be undying. The evil spirit's core trembled violently. It was finally heavily injured from the power of the primordial god Silk. It began to disperse at a visible rate. However, the rate at which it was dispersing was rather insignificant compared to its tremendous core. It would probably take half a month to completely destroy its core. However, the evil spirit's second power had already descended from outer space. It enveloped the Tian Yuan continent as a huge, blood-red cloud, dyeing the sky red. The entire world seemed to have been dyed red. At this rate, the second power would fuse with the evil spirit in just a few seconds. Jianshun, the Spirit King, and all the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts raised their heads at that moment. They stared at the huge, blood-red cloud that was rapidly descending from outer space. All of their eyes were filled with reluctance, and most of them were filled with despair. All of them knew that once the evil spirit fused with the second power, they would no longer be able to turn the situation around. Jianshin smiled miserably. He had never thought that his life would end under the calamity of the world. He was filled with reluctance as well. The Receival Protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had also thought about escaping to the Saints' world, but opening the tunnel to the Saints' world was not something that could be completed in a short amount of time. The evil spirit would never let them leave. Fairy Haoyue had already stood up in the bright Moon Divine Hall. Her eyes shone brightly as she sternly communicated with Jianshun. Jianshun, give up on this world. I'll burn my soul to open the gateway to the Saints' world. You can leave with your loved ones. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late. Fairy Haoyue was already prepared to leave by herself at any time. However, she would need to use a secret technique to do so. The price was so great that she was unwilling to accept it so easily. At the same time, she would have to bear the risk of her soul being destroyed. After all, she no longer possessed the strength she had when she was at her peak. She was only a weak soul. If she could convince Jianshen, the price she had to pay would be much lower, even if she had to burn her soul to open the tunnel, so that Jianshen could leave with the bright moon divine hall. If Jianshen remains stubborn, I'll leave by myself, even if I have to bear the great risk of my soul being destroyed, Fairy Haoyue thought. The Tian Yuan continent revered me as the sovereign of the humans. I, Jianshen, bear such a great reputation, so how can I abandon them and leave by myself? Moreover, I'm not someone who's afraid of death, Jianshen firmly declined. At the same time, a blurry figure appeared at the top of the elven god tree. She was the greatest divine king of the god clan, Aladona. There's no hope for this world anymore. Looks like I can only abandon my clansmen here and leave with the war god. Aladona murmured to herself. High in the sky, the strands of blood rapidly pressed down, radiating with an extremely tremendous pressure that permeated the surroundings. All the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts clenched the primordial god silk tightly. Many of them were filled with great reluctance to accept this. At this moment, a saint ruler from the world of Forsaken Saint's hand had been cut by the primordial god silk because he had used too much strength. Blood immediately flowed out, staining the primordial god silk. It was silently absorbed by the primordial god silk. The moment the blood was absorbed, the primordial god silk in the saint ruler's hand began to shine with a golden light that was even more dazzling than the other parts of the silk. However, it was not very obvious, so it was difficult to tell with the naked eye. However, Jianshen had already refined the primordial god silk and established a connection with it long ago. Any changes to the primordial god silk were unable to escape his senses. Jianshen was stunned and immediately looked at the saint ruler. His eyes immediately lit up when he saw the saint ruler's cut hand. Blood can actually strengthen the primordial god silk? No, I've clearly tried it before. Even my chaotic blood can't make the primordial god silk change like this, Jianshen thought. He was rather confused, but he immediately ordered, Quick, everyone cut your hand and drip your blood onto the primordial god silk. Immediately, quite a few people obeyed Jianshen's orders and cut their hands, allowing their blood to stain the primordial god silk. A portion of their blood was unable to fuse with the primordial god silk at all, but the primordial god silk absorbed the blood of others. The primordial god silk immediately began to shine brightly after absorbing the blood. It shone with an even brighter golden light, allowing people to tell with a single glance that it was much more powerful than before. The damage it dealt to the evil spirit's core had increased as well. It's the world of Forsaken Saints. The blood of cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints actually has such a wondrous effect on the primordial god silk. Not only can the primordial god silk absorb their blood, but their blood is like a great tonic to the primordial god silk as well. The blood of the people of our world is useless to the primordial god silk. Jianshen immediately became overjoyed with this discovery. He could not help but cry out. The bloodlines of the people from the world of Forsaken Saints are extraordinary, the sword spirits murmured. The Spirit King's eyes narrowed, and he immediately called out, Quick, all Forsaken Saints, immediately release your blood so that the primordial god silk can absorb it. This might be our only hope of fending off the crisis. With that, the Spirit King cut his hand first and allowed his blood to fuse with the primordial god silk. The other people from the world of Forsaken Saints did not hesitate at all. They all cut their hands with their final hopes and offered up their blood. Sure enough, all the blood from the Forsaken Saints was absorbed by the primordial god silk. Immediately, the primordial god silk shone brightly as the power within rapidly recovered. The strengthening of the primordial god silk caused the evil spirit to shriek out miserably. Its core rapidly dispersed. Clearly, it had suffered great damage. Jianshen raised his head to look at the sky. The blood-red cloud had already loomed over his head. In just a few seconds, it would fuse with the evil spirit's core. During that time, even if the primordial god Silk became even more powerful, it would not be able to destroy the evil spirit's core. Chapter 16:31. At this moment, a green light shot over from the distance at an unbelievable speed. An illusory ancient tree appeared in the blink of an eye. A surging aura of life permeated the air, blocking the blood cloud from below. When the blood cloud collided with the illusory ancient tree, the speed of the blood cloud's descent came to an abrupt halt. I've sacrificed 30% of my vitality to stop the evil spirit's power and buy some time for you. However, in my current condition, the remaining 30% of my vitality is nowhere close to what it was when I was at my peak condition, so I can't last for much longer. You only have a day at most. If you can't destroy the evil spirit's core in a day, I can only leave with the war god. Aladona's voice rang out in Jianshun and the Spirit King's ears. The Origin Realm experts of the two worlds only saw the illusionary tree hover in the air, stopping the evil spirit's power. They did not receive Aladona's message. Jianshun was immediately overjoyed when he heard that. Aladona's strength had far exceeded his expectations. He originally believed that Aladona would not be able to interfere with this matter as she was only a soul. After all, no matter how powerful she had been when she was alive, she would be extremely weak with just a soul. Moreover, Aladona was the divine king of a higher world. She was supreme and viewed everyone as ants. Why would such a supreme existence care about the weaker creatures of the Tian Yuan continent? He had seen this from Protector Shui. Protector Shui had destroyed an entire era back then. However, he had never thought that Aladona would not leave with Taita, even though she clearly had the ability to do so. Instead, she sacrificed 30% of her vitality to buy them a day of time. Jianshun was rather surprised by the fact that a mighty divine king would be willing to pay such a price to help a group of creatures that were as weak as ants in her eyes. However, no matter what, Aladona's actions were a great kindness to the 4 races of the Tian Yuan continent and countless people in the world of Forsaken Saints. A gleam of light flashed through the Spirit King's eyes when he heard the message. He deeply glanced in the direction of the elves on the wasteland continent before looking at the illusory tree that had stopped the evil spirit's power from descending. The light in his eyes flickered a few times before he forced his blood into the primordial god Silk as hard as he could. At the same time, he circulated his cultivation method, rapidly replenishing his blood even as it was drained away. What is this? It can actually resist such a tremendous and terrifying power like the great tribulation of heaven and earth? All the Origin Realm experts of the two worlds raised their heads and stared at the single, resplendent pillar of light in the sky. Their faces were filled with shock. They were not the only ones. All the sainthood experts in the two worlds raised their heads to look at the sky. Countless gazes gathered on the illusionary tree that stood between the heavens and the earth at the same time. Shock and excitement filled their faces. That seems to be the elven god tree of the elves. Impossible. That tree is extraordinary and shone brilliantly in ancient times, but it's only at the level of the Holy Emperor. How can it stop such a terrifying, evil power? The Origin Realm experts on the side of the Tian Yuan continent recognized the origins of the tree. Disbelief filled their faces. That's the elven god tree. Since when did the elven god tree become so powerful? It can actually stop such a terrifying, evil power. Probably even Sovereign Jianshun and the Spirit King of the world of Forsaken Saints can't do something like that. On the wasteland continent, the sainthood experts of the 100 races all stared at the divine tree in the sky in surprise. All of them were in disbelief, and many of them even rubbed their eyes in disbelief. They wondered if they were seeing things. The elven god tree had existed for a very long time. It was no stranger to the 100 races, but since when had it become so powerful? In particular, the unimaginably dense and terrifying life force that blossomed at this moment shocked all of them. This was because the life force was just too great, so great that it exceeded the scope of many of their understanding. It could even faintly stand up to the terrifying evil force. Quick, make time. We only have a day. If we can't destroy the origin energy of the crisis of the world in a day, we'll all die, the Spirit King growled. The Spirit King growled. It was all up to the world of forsaken saints to destroy the evil spirits because of their special bloodline. Only the blood of the forsaken saints would be beneficial to the primordial god Silk. At this moment, none of the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints who had come to the Tian Yuan continent remained uninvolved. All the sainthood experts, protectors, elders, and even the Spirit King offered their blood to the primordial god Silk. As for the cultivators of the four races on the Tian Yuan continent, they had nothing to do with it because they were unable to help now that the situation had developed to such a state. The primordial god Silk shone with more and more dazzling light. In the end, it turned into a golden sun, illuminating the entire world. It blotted out the blood-red sky and dyed the entire world golden. The evil spirit source that was trapped inside could no longer maintain its calm. It crazily charged left and right, letting out waves of miserable shrieks that were filled with pain. Its source that was known as undying and indestructible was currently shrinking bit by bit. Once its source completely disappeared, it would no longer be able to maintain its composure. Once it was completely gone, it would cease to exist. This lasted for half a day. After half a day, the evil spirit's core had shrunk by a third. All the forsaken saints from the world of forsaken saints had become pale and haggard. There were even many saint rulers and saint kings who were on the verge of collapsing. They had all become extremely weak from the tremendous loss of blood. Although they constantly produced new blood, the regeneration rate was nowhere near as fast as the loss of blood. At the same time, the endless regeneration of blood placed a very heavy burden on their bodies. It severely depleted their vital energies. People from the world of forsaken saints constantly poured out of the tunnel that connected the Tian Yuan continent and the world of forsaken saints. They had all hurried over under the Spirit King's orders so that they could contribute to avert the crisis of the world. Chapter 1632. Jianshin was not the only one who had noticed this. All the Origin Realm experts and sainthood experts present could tell the same. They were unable to destroy the evil spirit's core in a single day. The world of forsaken saints continued to provide blood, but everyone no longer felt as excited and hopeful as they had half a day ago. They had returned to a gloomy and oppressive mood, as if they were facing the end of the world. The atmosphere became extremely heavy. I'm not alone in the world of forsaken saints. I have tens of thousands of clansmen behind me. As the patriarch, if I can't even protect my own clansmen, how can I live up to my status as the patriarch? If my clansmen and I cannot avoid death, then I have to die on the front lines as the patriarch. I have to use my life to protect my clansmen. Suddenly, a holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints laughed aloud. With that, white flames suddenly appeared on his body. His body rapidly melted within the flames, allowing an even more powerful bloodline power to enter the primordial god Silk. Mandoff! Someone cried out in grief. Mandoff was burning his vital energies and body to destroy the evil spirit's core. At that moment, everyone's gazes gathered on Mandoff. Whether it was the cultivators from the four races or the world of forsaken saints, their gazes toward Mandoff were filled with admiration and respect. Even if I die, I want to die before my clansmen. My clansmen, I won't be able to protect you in the future. I'll be taking my leave first. Mandoff smiled. His body had been reduced to ashes by the white flames. Mandoff, you've done well. We have no other choice. If we don't destroy this damn thing here, all the hundreds of billions of people from our world will be doomed once it recovers. Since we're going to die either way, we might as well die with some value, said Mandoff. Another holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints stepped forward and spoke boldly. Just like Mandoff, he burned his vital energies until he died. In the end, even his body was reduced to ashes. Their vital energies had already been severely depleted to the point where it was difficult for them to regenerate blood. Now that they were burning their vital energies together with their bodies, it was equivalent to activating the last bit of their bloodline power. Even their lives had become a part of their bloodline power. At this moment, a holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints looked at Jianshan and clasped his hands. Sovereign Jianshan, may I ask if burning their vital energies will be helpful in destroying this damned thing? Jianshan looked at the holy emperor who had just spoken. From the holy emperor's eyes, he could see magnanimity, bravery, and determination. Jianshan nodded with a heavy heart. He already knew what the holy emperor was thinking. If that's the case, I don't have to worry, said the holy emperor. With that, a similar white flame appeared on his body. In the end, the holy emperor was reduced to ashes. Ha, it's already too late. Don't be afraid of death. Don't be afraid of death. Ha, it's already like this. Don't be afraid of death. We've chosen to die. This is a courageous way to die. If our sacrifice can save the lives of the people of the world of forsaken saints, the people of the world of forsaken saints will be grateful to us for generations to come. However, if we continue to be afraid of death, we'll only be able to live for a few more hours. What's the point of that? An old man called out sternly. He was also a saint emperor. Afterwards, the old man also burned his vital energies. He was reduced to ashes along with his body. Perhaps because they had been influenced by them, more and more people from the world of forsaken saints began to speak boldly. They all offered up their lives. Not only were there holy emperors, but there were also holy emperors, saint rulers, and so on. Their sacrifice allowed the primordial god Silk to become even more powerful. It shone with a dazzling light. Jianshan, the environment of our world of forsaken saints, is horrible. It's not suitable for people below sainthood to live. Many children and weak forsaken saints basically die to the horrible environment every day. We've come to your world to travel to the saints' world, as well as to find a better place for our clansmen to live. Although we've invaded your world in the past and caused you heavy losses, we will use this opportunity to make up for those losses. I, Gongxi Ming, am willing to sacrifice my life to stop the crisis. I only hope that once the crisis of the world is averted, you can give our weak clansmen a place to live. I will be eternally grateful even in the underworld. Gongxi Ming bowed deeply to Jianshan before a layer of white flames appeared on him. He began to burn his vital energies. Gongxi Ming. Cheng Jingyan stared at Gongxi Ming with mixed feelings. Her heart was filled with an indescribable bitterness as she watched her old friend, whom she had known for over 10,000 years, gradually approach death. Xiongzhong and the other elders from the world of forsaken saints, as well as all the origin realm experts from the Tianyuan continent, stared at Gongxi Ming as well. Their gazes underwent a drastic change, becoming filled with respect and admiration. A deathly silence descended. Everyone was stern as they stared at Gongxi Ming. Their hearts were in turmoil. Gongxi Ming was an elder of the Returnance realm. His status was incomparable to the Holy Emperor, yet he had actually chosen this path of no return. His courage and boldness had deeply shaken everyone present. Jianshan was filled with joy. He bowed deeply to Gongxi Ming and said with a heavy voice, I promise you that if we successfully survive this crisis, I, Jianshan, will definitely fulfill your final wish. Gongxi Ming seemed to have been relieved of a great burden. He smiled faintly as his body turned to dust. The sacrifice of a Returnance expert immediately made the primordial god Silk shine even more dazzlingly. Vaguely, it seemed like a layer of golden flames was blazing and pulsing. Afterward, the people from the world of forsaken saints burned their vital essences one after another. After Gongxi Ming, another elder from Ouyang Yangwen's side chose to sacrifice himself. 7 other receival realm experts from the world of forsaken saints also sacrificed their precious lives, turning them into the power of the primordial god Silk to deal with the evil spirit's origin energy. Aside from the 9 origin realm experts, there were also many saint realm experts. There were countless other sainthood experts from the world of forsaken saints who were also burning their vital energies. They were surrounded by a layer of white flames as they shone with the most resplendent light. Under the gazes of all the experts and origin realm experts, they completed the final journey of their lives. This scene was both heroic and pessimistic. Countless people were affected by it. All the sainthood experts, and even the origin realm experts on the Tianyuan continent, were deeply shaken. Many of them even began to tear up. Jianshun hovered in the air as he stared at the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints who had basically sacrificed their lives. He bowed deeply at them all. He was so shaken that he was speechless. Chapter 16:33. Whether it was the humans, the sea race, the magical beasts, or the 100 races, all the cultivators from the Tianyuan continent felt their hearts tremble. They stared at the people from a world of forsaken saints who were willing to sacrifice their lives for the sake of averting the crisis of the world with mixed feelings. Many people showed admiration in their eyes. They had been enemies with the world of forsaken saints before and had fought several times, resulting in heavy casualties. The Tianyuan continent had even been split into 4 continents as a result, resulting in unimaginable losses. Many people on the Tianyuan continent felt deep hatred for the foreign cultivators because the world of forsaken saints was the invader. If they had not invaded the world, all these losses could have been avoided. However, at that moment, the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints had actually offered up their lives in order to stop the crisis of the world. They had burned away all their vital energies and bodies, using their deaths to force out the last sliver of their bloodline power. Their actions deeply touched the hearts of all the cultivators present. It also caused the hatred the experts from the 4 races from the Tianyuan continent felt towards the world of forsaken saints decrease by quite a bit. Unfortunately, only the power of the bloodline of the forsaken saints from the world of forsaken saints was effective against the primordial god Silk. Otherwise, it would not be just the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints who were willing to sacrifice themselves. The primordial god Silk shone with an unprecedented golden light after absorbing the power of the bloodlines of the cultivators and the elders who had reached the origin realm. In the end, the golden light directly turned into a roaring golden flame. It spat out tongues of flame as it incinerated the evil spirit's core. The evil spirit's core, which was known to be indestructible, dissipated at an exponential rate under the burning of the golden flames. In the end, the evil spirit's core became smaller and smaller, weaker and weaker. The painful cries of the evil spirit rang out from the core. Its second power had been blocked by Aladona's 30% life force, preventing it from fusing with the evil spirit and allowing it to recover to its peak strength. Its core was trapped by the primordial god Silk, so it was unable to break free. The evil spirit seemed to know that it would not be able to escape today, and it roared furiously and unwillingly. However, its voice grew smaller and smaller as it was burned by the golden flames formed from the primordial god Silk, and it grew weaker and weaker. In the end, it vanished. Its core that was known to be indestructible, something that even Jianshun and the Spirit King could do nothing about, finally dispersed under the golden flames of the primordial god Silk. Jianshun, the Spirit King, and the origin realm experts in the surroundings all let out a sigh of relief when they sensed the evil presence vanish. Many of them smiled from having survived a disaster, and over 80% of the cultivators on the Tianyuan continents bowed deeply in the direction of the world of forsaken saints. They did not bow to the living cultivators from the world of forsaken saints. Instead, they bowed to the people who had sacrificed their lives to stop the crisis of the world. The crisis of the world hasn't been completely destroyed. There's still a sliver of its soul left, Jianshun said in a deep voice. He looked at the sky. The blood-red cloud that had basically filled the entire sky still existed. It shone with a demonic red light as it resisted the tree of life condensed from 30% of Aladona's life force. However, the resistance had been greatly weakened by the disappearance of the evil spirit's core. After all, there was only a sliver of the evil spirit's soul in the blood-red cloud. It was just far too weak, so it was unable to use the tremendous energy. As a result, the sliver of soul was unable to unleash any of its power, even though it was powerful enough to overturn the universe. With a thought from Jianshun, The two pieces of the primordial god silk shone with dazzling light. Under a layer of golden flames, they soared into the sky like two huge dragons. They directly entered the blood-red cloud with an unstoppable force. They planned on wiping out the evil spirit's soul hidden in the cloud. Jianshan stood below and slowly closed his eyes. The senses of his soul seemed to have fused with the primordial god silk. He controlled the primordial god silk to move through the blood-red cloud. Wherever the primordial god silk passed by, the clouds in the surroundings would begin to disperse. Every single cloud, there was an evil energy that belonged to the evil spirit. It was extremely powerful, enough to pose a fatal threat to Jianshan and the Spirit King. However, the primordial god silk just happened to counter the energy. Coupled with the fact that the evil spirit's soul could not control the energy, the primordial god silk was unstoppable in the blood-red cloud. Although the sliver of the evil spirit's soul had carefully hidden itself in the blood-red cloud, Jianshan still found it very soon. He immediately controlled the two strands of primordial god silk to surround it, forming a huge net that enveloped the region. It trapped the sliver of the evil spirit's soul in the blood-red cloud. Afterwards, the golden net rapidly shrank, forcing the sliver of the evil spirit's soul to be unable to escape. Under the attacks of the primordial god silk, it could only produce a chilling cry before dispersing. However, Jianshan did not let his guard down. He continued to control the primordial god silk to move through the blood-red cloud. He carefully sensed for any remaining fragments of the evil spirit's soul fragment. This was because he could not guarantee that the fragment he had just destroyed was all that the evil spirit had left behind. If a fragment of its soul remained, it would cause endless trouble once it matured. The golden flames on the primordial god silk had already vanished, and its golden light became dimmer and dimmer. As it purified the blood-red cloud, the power within it rapidly dispersed as well. Jianshan controlled the primordial god silk to search through the blood-red cloud several times. Only when the primordial god silk had dimmed and the power within it had been depleted did he stop searching. He believed that it was impossible for the evil spirit's soul fragment to remain after searching so carefully. After all, a third of the blood-red cloud had already been purified by the primordial god silk. With how weak the fragment was, it was impossible for it to hide from his careful search. Below, all the cultivators from the two worlds raised their heads and stared at the blood-red cloud in the sky. Some of them would look at Jianshan from time to time. Their gazes were filled with admiration and fear, as well as some anticipation. They all knew that there was still a fragment of the evil spirit's soul hidden in the blood-red cloud. Whether they could destroy the fragment or not all depended on Jianshan. If the soul fragment could not be destroyed, although they could temporarily avoid the calamity of this world, when the soul fragment grew up again in the future, the calamity of the world would occur again. At that time, no one knew if they would have enough power to resist the second calamity of the world. The Spirit King sternly stared at the blood-red cloud in the sky as well. He knew that they had not completely won the battle, even though they had destroyed the evil spirit's core. At this moment, two strands of primordial god silk flickered with a dim golden light as they appeared from the blood-red cloud. They wrapped around Jianshan's wrist as two golden threads. At the same time, Jianshan slowly opened his eyes. Some exhaustion appeared on his face. Did you destroy the remaining fragment of the soul from the crisis of the world? The Spirit King arrived before Jianshan and asked eagerly. Jianshan exhaled deeply. He smiled victoriously and said, "Fortunately, I did not fail. I've destroyed the last fragment of the soul from the crisis of the world." That's good, that's good. The sacrifices of so many people from our world of forsaken saints have not been in vain, including a few Origin Realm elders and protectors. The Spirit King smiled happily as well. Jianshan did not speak loudly, but he did not try to hide it. Even the weakest person present was a saint ruler, so they could clearly hear what Jianshan had said even from some distance away. Immediately, cheers rang out. Many people were excited, while a small number of people began to sob. Their faces were filled with sorrow. Although they had persevered until the end and survived, many of their loved ones had died in this battle. One could very well imagine the pain in their hearts. Chapter 16:34. We finally won. I never thought that the crisis of the world would be so terrifying. We've sacrificed so many experts to destroy it, including a few Origin Realm experts. Many people from the four races of the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints gently sighed. Many of them became dazed. Everything that had happened before was like a dream to them. They had lived for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. They could even occasionally learn about things that happened millions of years ago through some ancient books. Whether it was qualifications or experience, they were incomparably rich. Not to say that they knew the beginning and end of the world, but almost all the sensational events that happened in the past million years were clear to many of them. However, what happened today completely subverted their understanding. A single crisis of the world had caused such heavy damage to the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints, where they had almost been destroyed. This shocked everyone present. Even though they had successfully survived the crisis, every single one of them knew extremely well just how dangerous it had been for them to survive the crisis. This battle was destined to be passed down through the ages. It would be recorded in the ancient records of various organizations and passed down for all eternity. The world of Forsaken Saints had paid a price far greater than the Tian Yuan continent in the battle against the evil spirit. Tens of thousands of sainthood experts had died. They had all sacrificed their lives willingly, burning their vital energies and forcing all the power of their bloodline into the primordial god Silk. Even their corpses had been reduced to ashes. Even a few protectors and elders who had reached the Origin Realm had suffered the same fate. The surviving cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints were all pale and haggard because they had lost a large amount of essence blood. Many of them had already collapsed on the ground. The same was true for the Spirit King. He was even weaker than the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. Not only was he the one who had lost the most essence blood, but he had also suffered an intense backlash from forcefully using the second move of a will to split the heavens in the battle against the evil spirit. Not only had his vitality weakened, but his wounds were so severe that he was even more injured than anyone else present. Jian Chun was also heavily injured, even more so than the Spirit King at times. However, he possessed the chaotic body and the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force. The two powers basically healed him at all times, so his wounds did not worsen at all. Instead, most of them had recovered. The crisis of the world has been destroyed now, but the evil power from the crisis still hasn't completely dispersed. How do we deal with this power? If we let this power remain in the sky, it'll probably cause some people to feel uneasy. The Spirit King looked at the sky. The Spirit King stared at the sky and growled. However, his voice was filled with an unconcealable sense of weakness. Jinshin looked over. The blood-red clouds in the sky were still as dense as ever. From afar, it seemed like a huge, red carpet had spread across the sky, dyeing the entire region blood-red. The scorching sun was unable to penetrate it at all. Jinshin frowned when he saw this. Even though the power of the primordial god Silk had wiped out a third of the evil spirit's power, the remaining two-thirds was still extremely vast to Jinshin and the Spirit King. It had completely exceeded their strength. However, the evil spirit no longer controlled the power, so the threat it posed was reduced to a minimum. It could even be said that it was no longer a threat. However, completely wiping out the evil spirit's power was not something that Jinshin and the Spirit King could do. It was still not an easy task. Senior Aladona, can you lend us a hand and completely wipe out the evil power left behind by the crisis of the world? Jinshan asked the elven god tree in the territory of the elves on the wasteland continent for help. His primordial god Silk was almost completely depleted, so using the power of the primordial god Silk to purify the evil power was clearly unrealistic. At the same time, many of the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints had lost a large amount of essence blood earlier. Their blood had been regenerated time and time again, so they were all extremely weak. They were obviously unable to use the same method as before. After all, the evil spirit had been wiped out, so the remaining evil power did not pose much of a threat anymore. I can only use 30% of my life force to help you at most. There's only 1.5 left, so it's not enough to wipe out the evil power. However, I can use it to push the evil power into outer space, but I'll need the two of you to work together. Aladona's voice rang out in Jinshin's head. Her voice was rather weak as well. Clearly, losing 30% of her life force was a great loss to her. Then I'll have to trouble you, Senior, Jinshin said gratefully. As long as the evil power was pushed into outer space, he would have time to slowly deal with it. I wonder if my chaotic body can absorb this evil power. If it can, then my chaotic body. A gleam of light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. He immediately became rather tempted. Afterward, Jinshin, the Spirit King, and Aladona worked together. They used their supreme strength to seal up the evil power and slowly pushed it into outer space. At this moment, Aladona only had around 1/10 of her life force remaining. The injuries on your body are not light. If you don't treat them well, it may even leave behind irreversible sequelae that will affect your cultivation in the future. I'll give you this last bit of vitality to help you heal your injuries. It can also be considered as a good karma. However, I can't do anything about the injuries on your soul. Aladona's voice rang out in the Spirit King's head. Afterward, her last bit of life force immediately turned into a tremendous amount of life force and was channeled into the Spirit King's body. At that moment, the Spirit King became enveloped by a layer of dense green light. His wounds healed at an unbelievable rate under the green light. Even the weakness on his face rapidly receded. In just a few seconds, the Spirit King had completely recovered from his heavy wounds. He healed so quickly that it had completely surpassed the fusion of Jinshin's chaotic body and Radiant Saint Force origin energy. After all, this was the life force of a divine king. Even though it was not a lot, it was still extremely terrifying. It was not something Class 9, Radiant Saint Force origin energy, could compare to. Thank you, Senior. Shunjian will remember your kindness today. If I have the chance in the future, I will definitely repay you. The Spirit King clasped his hands in Aladona's direction. Not only had the strand of life force from Aladona healed his wounds, but the remaining life force had also fused with his cultivation, turning into his own energy. His strength had increased by quite a lot once again. If it were not for the restrictions of this world, he could have reached godhood at any time. The blood-red cloud that enveloped the Tianyuan continent had vanished. When the scorching sun illuminated the land once again, Jinshin had already entered the evil power all by himself. He wanted to try and see if he could absorb the power and refine it into his own chaotic force. Chapter 1635. As soon as Jinshin entered the blood-red cloud, he felt an extremely tremendous pressure radiate from all directions. It weighed down on him like mountains, causing him to suddenly sink. His speed was greatly affected, making him much slower. At the same time, an evil presence entered Jinshin's head, affecting Jinshin's soul. Vaguely, he seemed to hallucinate. Jinshin's eyes narrowed as a gleam of light flickered through them. He calmed himself down and suppressed the thoughts of hallucinating from the evil power. Afterward, the azulate swords hovered above his head, shining with an azure and violet light. They formed a barrier around him. Chaotic force filled his entire body at that moment as well, working with the azulate swords to block the pressure from the blood-red cloud. After all, the blood-red cloud was equivalent to the evil spirit's power at its peak. Even though 1/3 of it had been purified by the primordial god Silk, the remaining 2/3 was still far more powerful than Jinshin. If the evil spirit still possessed its consciousness, even if it controlled the remaining 2/3, the strength it could unleash would be far more than what Jinshin and the Spirit King could contend against. Even though the evil spirit had been destroyed, the power of the blood-red cloud still pressured Jinshin quite a bit. Jinshin did not approach the center of the blood-red cloud. Instead, he only traveled 100 meters before stopping at the edge of the cloud. He sat down sternly. Even though he knew that the evil spirit had been destroyed, Jinshin still did not dare to be careless as he stood in the blood-red cloud. This was because the cloud was just too powerful. It had completely surpassed the level of deities. He even suspected that even the power controlled by gods was not as great as the blood-red cloud. Jinshin sat in the blood-red cloud and sucked in a deep breath. He slowly closed his eyes and began to carefully absorb the power of the cloud. Since the cloud was just too powerful and contained an extremely evil presence, Jinshin did not know whether his chaotic body could absorb the power, nor did he know whether the power would harm him or not. As a result, he did not dare to act recklessly for the first time. He only absorbed a tiny sliver of the cloud's power. When Jinshin absorbed the tiny sliver of power, his body began to tremble violently before he could refine it. As soon as the sliver of power entered his body, it erupted with an extremely great power. It was like an exploding barrel of gunpowder, erupting with shocking pulses. It had almost shattered Jinshin's meridians. The sliver of power was just too great. Even with Jinshin's 8th layer chaotic body, he found it rather difficult to endure, yet he had only absorbed a tiny sliver. If he absorbed too much of it all at once, he would probably become extremely heavily injured. Jinshin gritted his teeth and silently endured the intense pain. Every time his chaotic body broke through, he would have to undergo the pain of refining his body. Every time he underwent the process, it would be a torment of life and death. The pain from the sliver of power was nowhere near as great as the pain from refining his body. Enduring this kind of pain was nothing to Jinshin. The chaotic body within Jinshin's chaotic Naiden surged as strands of chaotic force surged. At the same time, he circulated his cultivation method to refine the sliver of power. Even though the power of the cloud was great, it was only a tiny sliver. There was not enough of it, so it was refined by Jinshin in just a short while. Jinshin did not rejoice at all after refining the sliver of power. Instead, he frowned and slowly opened his eyes. He murmured, "The sliver of power has actually been refined into nothingness. It hasn't brought me any benefits at all. Is it impossible to refine the power in the cloud? Impossible. Chaotic force is the highest level of energy in the universe. Aside from Xianhuang Qi, there is no other energy that can compare to chaotic force. Even Yin and Yang Qi are formed from chaotic force. Although my current chaotic force is far from being true chaotic force, it still possesses a sliver of the characteristics of chaotic force. Although the power of the blood cloud is stronger than the 8th layer of chaotic force that I have grasped, it is still an ownerless energy that cannot be controlled by anyone. Logically speaking, if I want to refine and absorb the energy of the blood cloud, there is a 70 to 80% chance of success." Jinshin dismissed the idea that the chaotic body was unable to absorb the power of the cloud very soon. According to his understanding of chaotic force, it could absorb all kinds of energy in the world. There was no distinction between the 5 elements. Of course, that was under the premise that the absorbed energy was within the tolerance of his chaotic body. Jinshin did not give up. He continued to absorb and refine the power of the cloud. After a moment of thought, he became even more confident that the chaotic body could absorb the power of the cloud. If the cloud was under the evil spirit's control, he naturally would not have dared to think like that. However, the cloud of power was only a form of death energy that he could not resist. It did not even possess the ability to attack, which gave him a sliver of a chance to refine it for his own use. The amount of energy required to break through to the next layer of the chaotic body would multiply. It required an extremely large amount of energy. Now that he had reached the 8th layer, the amount of resources he needed to reach the 9th layer would exceed Jinshin's imagination. This amount of resources was not something that could be found on the Tianyuan continent. If he could use the power of the evil spirit's clone to advance his chaotic body, even if he could not reach the 9th layer, it would still be a great fortune for Jinshin. He could not afford to miss it. On his second attempt, Jinshin failed as well. The strand of energy he had absorbed was forcefully refined into nothingness, leaving nothing behind. His chaotic body did not grow at all either. Jinshin did not become dejected. He tried a third time, but he failed as well. Fourth time, failure. Fifth time, failure. Finally, after 5 failures, Jianshun succeeded on his 6th try. The strand of energy that he had absorbed was finally refined into a strand of chaotic force, turning into his own power. I understand now. Due to the uniqueness of the blood cloud's energy, I can't refine every single strand into chaotic force. I need to extract its essence, but the difficulty lies in the fact that it's impossible to distinguish the essence. Jinshin's eyes shone brightly. As long as he could refine the energy into chaotic force, he would be happy even if he had to waste a lot of time. Chapter 1636. Afterwards, Jianshin seemed to have gone mad. He became completely submerged in cultivation, using this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to increase his strength as much as possible. He did not pay any attention to the various matters that had occurred after the battle on the Tianyuan continent. After telling everyone that he was going into seclusion through a simple message, he completely sealed himself off in the blood-red cloud. Only after Jianshin had gone into seclusion did the experts of the 2 worlds begin to disperse. The first to leave were the people from the 4 races. Some of the more heavily injured people left as soon as possible, returning to their own clans to heal. There were also many cultivators who had lost their loved ones who remained. They stared at the battlefield in sorrow as they struggled to calm down. They refused to leave even after a very long time. In the blink of an eye, almost half of the people gathered on the battlefield had left. They all belonged to the 4 races of this world. The cultivators from a world of forsaken saints all remained where they were. None of them dared to leave without the Spirit King's orders. The Spirit King was the absolute ruler of the world of forsaken saints. If the world of forsaken saints was an empire, the Spirit King would be the emperor of the empire, unlike the 4 races of the Tianyuan continent. Although each race possessed origin realm experts, they did not place too many restrictions on their clansmen. They were relatively more free. I never thought that Jianshun would choose to enter seclusion at a time like this. Are you really cultivating, or are you running away from something? The Spirit King stared at the blood-red cloud in outer space as he murmured emotionlessly. Whatever. Since you want to enter seclusion, I'll wait until you're done. I just happen to need some time to heal the wounds of my soul, thought the Spirit King before looking away. He looked at the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints who had yet to leave and said, "All of you, return. The protectors and elders remain on the Tianyuan continent to recover. Once you've recovered, cooperate with the Tianyuan continent to clean up the battlefield." The cultivators from a world of forsaken saints nodded in unison. Afterward, all the sainthood experts returned to the world of forsaken saints through space gates. All the protectors and elders remained behind. They all understood that the Spirit King wanted them to remain because he was preparing to set foot on the Tianyuan continent. Although the greatest contributor was Jianshun, their world of forsaken saints had contributed greatly as well. It could even be said that if it were not for the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints who were willing to sacrifice their lives, they would still have been defeated in the end, even with Jinshin's help. Their world of forsaken saints had paid such a heavy price to deal with the crisis of the world. If the Tianyuan continent did not provide them with satisfactory compensation, they would never give up. Count up all the clansmen who have died after burning their vital energies. Place their memorial tablets in the Sacred Spirit Hall. Their clans and relatives will be protected by the Sacred Spirit Hall, ordered the Spirit King. Yes, Spirit King, the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints replied. Our Tianyuan continent wants a list of their names as well. We admire their great contributions to stopping the crisis of the world. We want their names and heroic deeds to be passed down. They deserve all of our respect. Shangwan Mu slowly flew over from afar and said sternly. With her strength at mid-reciprocity, she was the undisputed second sovereign of the human race. Her every word and action could obviously influence the humans of the Tianyuan continent. She could make some decisions for certain matters. The Spirit King looked at Shangwan Mu and an undetectable gleam of light flashed through his eyes. After a moment of thought, he said, "You're also a human of the Tian Yuan continent, and you're a reciprocity expert who's only weaker than Jinshin. You can represent the Tian Yuan continent. Since Jinshin isn't here right now, why don't you represent this world and come to an agreement with our world of Forsaken Saints?" Shangguan Mu's heart skipped a beat. Although she had no idea what the agreement would entail, or even if it existed at all, she understood that the Spirit King wanted to use the fact that their world of Forsaken Saints had contributed greatly to stopping the crisis of the world to ask for a piece of land from the Tian Yuan continent so that the world of Forsaken Saints could settle down. Due to the harsh environment of the world of Forsaken Saints, countless people would die to natural disasters every year. It was not suitable for weak cultivators to live in, while the natural environment of the Tian Yuan continent was like heaven to the weak cultivators of the world of Forsaken Saints. As a result, not only did the world of Forsaken Saints need to pass through the Tian Yuan continent to reach the Saints' world, it was also to find a place for the weak cultivators of the Forsaken Saints to settle down. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint the Spirit King. I may be a human of the Tian Yuan continent, but I don't live on the Tian Yuan continent. I've always stayed on Three Saint Island. This is related to the agreement between the Tian Yuan continent and your world of Forsaken Saints. So how can I make the decision as a foreigner? Let's wait for the human sovereign, Jinshin, to make the decision, said Shangguan Mu. The Spirit King frowned slightly. He glanced at the huge, blood-red cloud in outer space deeply and said emotionlessly, "If that's the case, I'll wait for Jinshin to emerge." Xiongzhong. Present. Xiongzhong immediately bowed to the Spirit King from nearby. He was extremely polite. "Once you've recovered, discuss with the representatives of the Tian Yuan continent about the matter of territory. Draw up a map first, and Jinshin and I will make the final decision," the Spirit King said emotionlessly. His voice was filled with an unquestionable dominance. "Yes, Spirit King," Xiongzhong replied politely. With that, the Spirit King no longer remained. With a flash, he turned into a streak of light and left. However, he did not return to the world of Forsaken Saints immediately. Instead, he paid a visit to the territory of the elves on the Wasteland continent to personally thank Aladona, who had transformed into the elven god tree. Only then did he return to the world of Forsaken Saints through a spatial tunnel to heal his soul. He had no idea whether he and Jinshin would engage in a battle over territory once Jinshin emerged. If they really did fight, it would be very difficult for him to be Jinshin's opponent with his injured soul. As a result, he needed to return to his peak condition before Jinshin emerged. This was because he would not back down when it came to territory, even if he and Jinshin had once come from the same world. The expressions of Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Guihai Yi Dao, and the other human sovereigns became rather ugly when they saw the Spirit King leave all the Origin Realm elders and protectors on the Tian Yuan continent. They all arrived beside Shangguan Mu, hoping that she would remain on the Tian Yuan continent. After all, Jinshin was not present right now. They felt extremely pressured when facing so many Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. On the other side, the expressions of the Origin Realm elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints changed slightly when they saw how Yang Lai and the others wished for Shangguan Mu, to remain on the Tian Yuan continent. All of their gazes toward Shangguan Mu, were filled with deep fear. "Don't worry. I will pay attention to the Tian Yuan continent at all times from Three Saint Island. If there's a need, I will hurry over immediately." Shangguan Mu, tactfully declined their requests before looking at the crowd. Her gaze landed on Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Shangguan Aojian. When she saw Shangguan Aojian, a sliver of gentleness finally appeared in her cold eyes. She said, "Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, let's return to the island." Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, and Xiao Yu had all taken part in the battle. They were currently filled with weakness and exhaustion. The three of them immediately flew out of the crowd when they heard Shangguan Mu's words. Under the envious gazes of many people, they returned to Three Saint Island with Shangguan Mu. At the same time, a cold gaze landed on Shangguan Aojian's back from the crowd. There was some disdain in that gaze. It was a young man with an extraordinary bearing. His face was filled with undisguised pride. Even though he also seemed rather weak, he was unable to hide the noble bearing of someone from a large clan. The young man was the young master of Chanyang Prefecture, Chanyang-su. Over 20 years had passed, but Chanyang-su had not changed at all compared to 20 years ago. Both his appearance and bearing were the same as before. The only thing that had changed was his strength. He was no longer a great saint master from 20 years ago. He was a saint ruler who had reached sainthood. Of course, he had only become a saint ruler after consuming countless precious heavenly resources and various resources from Chanyang Prefecture. As the young master of Chanyang Prefecture, coupled with the fact that he was loved by Chanyang Ba, who held the greatest authority in Chanyang Prefecture, Chanyang-su was able to use all the resources in Chanyang Prefecture fearlessly. He also received personal guidance from more than one holy emperor, which was why he was able to become a saint ruler at such a young age. He was different from Shangguan Aojian. Shangguan Aojian kept a low profile and never acted ostentatiously. Although there had been rumors about the young master of Three Saint Island on the Tianyuan continent in recent years, the rumors gradually vanished as Shangguan Aojian kept a low profile. On the other hand, Chanyang-su's status immediately skyrocketed after he became the young master of Chanyang Prefecture due to his glorious clan and terrifying background. He received the attention of countless people on the continent. Coupled with his rapid cultivation talent, rumors gradually spread that the young master of Chanyang Prefecture would be able to catch up to Jinshin in the future. This was because Chanyang-su had not used a violet cloud peach to become a saint ruler. Chanyang-su stared at Shangguan Aojian's back as he clenched his fists. He thought, "Young master of Three Saint Island, I'll show you my power before long. Aren't you just a step ahead of me because you used the violet cloud peach you obtained from my uncle? Now that my uncle has returned, I'll have a violet cloud peach very soon as well, and it'll be of the best quality. Once I consume it, I'll personally go to Three Saint Island to challenge you and crush you beneath my feet. I'll make you understand that the reason why I lost to you several dozen times over the years was because I didn't have a violet cloud peach." Chapter 16:37. After Shangguan Mu-er's departure, the sainthood experts of the sea race and the 100 races all left the Tianyuan continent with Poseidon and Taita. They returned to their own territories to recover. The battle earlier had been extremely difficult and dangerous. Although they had won in the end, the origin realm experts of the 4 races and the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints had all become extremely exhausted. In particular, the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints had exceeded their limits to regenerate blood, so they had exhausted far more energy than the origin realm experts from the Tianyuan continent. However, although Poseidon and Taita had left the Tianyuan continent and returned to their own clans, the two of them were the same as Shangguan Mu-er. They paid close attention to the situation on the Tianyuan continent from very far away, guarding against the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints. The White Tiger did not return to the Beast God continent with the majority of the people from the Beast God continent. Instead, he remained on the Tianyuan continent, returning to Flame City with Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling. Although he was the beast god of the magical beasts, the sovereign of the magical beasts, the White Tiger did not feel any attachment to the beast god continent at all. He did not feel any sense of belonging at all. On the other hand, Flame City was Jinshin City, so the White Tiger felt a greater sense of belonging when he stayed there. Moreover, with so many origin realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints remaining on the Tianyuan continent and Jinshin just happened to be away, the existence of the protectors and elders placed a great deal of pressure on the Tianyuan continent. At a time like this, the Tianyuan continent just happened to require even more origin realm experts. The White Tiger, Xiao Jin, and Xiao Ling personally stayed in Flame City, which unknowingly increased the city's status. Naturally, the Holy Emperor of the Peng clan, Sangqiong, would take care of the matters on the Beast God continent. With Sangqiong's experience, dealing with these matters was obviously a piece of cake for him. On the other hand, although the White Tiger was an origin realm expert, he did not have any experience in leadership. After all, His age and experience were all there was to it. Xiaoling was the barrier spirit of Mercenary City, silently guarding the city for 1,000,000 years. However, Mercenary City had been destroyed long ago. Even the seal beneath Mercenary City had been destroyed. Her mission no longer existed. She would no longer be bound. In this world, Xiaoling no longer had anyone close to her other than Jianshan. As a result, she had no home, so she naturally remained in Flame City. Perhaps even Xiaoling herself did not realize it, but she had already begun to treat Flame City as her home. This was because the city had been founded by her brother, Jianshan. She felt a sense of closeness as she remained there. A air, a san, and a sea. The four new Origin Realm experts currently supported each other as they stood on the shattered ground. They all looked at the blood-red cloud in outer space. During the battle against the evil spirit, the four of them had all broken through to the Origin Realm through the four strands of sword chi hidden in Jinshan's arm. Afterward, they used a formation and unleashed an earth-shaking strike to heavily injure the evil spirit. Due to the formation being far too powerful, they suffered a severe backlash after using it with their strength at the Origin Realm. As a result, the four of them did not even possess the ability to float. They stood on the shattered ground like ordinary people. Even though that was the case, no one dared to underestimate the four of them. Even though everyone could sense just how weak they were right now, the four of them had reached the Origin Realm after all. They had become the sovereigns of a world. Their status was completely different from before. Congratulations to the four of you for breaking through and reaching the Origin Realm. Although the battle has ended, the threat still remains. Please head to the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City to heal. We will provide you with the best medicine so that you can recover as soon as possible, said Jianshan. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Guihai Yidao arrived before the four brothers and invited them. The four of them could already tell that the four brothers were the most heavily injured among all the Origin Realm experts present. As a matter of fact, the four of them were unable to use the strength of the Origin Realm in their current condition. Probably even cultivators at the level of the Holy Emperor could pose a threat to them. Moreover, there were many Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints on the Tianyuan continent. Their existence was a great threat, so for safety's sake, Yang Lai, Guihai Yidao, and Guihai Yidao invited the four brothers to stay in the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City. This was because there was probably no other place on the Tianyuan continent that was safer than the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City aside from Three Saint Island. Even Flame City was not safe. Although the powerful island master of Three Saint Island was paying close attention to the Tianyuan continent, the four brothers were just too weak. If someone from the world of Forsaken Saints attacked the four of them at a time like this, probably even the island master would not be able to save them in time. Ada shook his head. Although we're heavily injured, we're not as weak as we seem. We still have some power to protect ourselves. Farewell. Ada's voice was still slightly weak, but it was filled with extremely great confidence. Ada and his brothers left this place. The four brothers supported each other as they wobbled into the air and flew into the distance. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Guihai Yidao remained where they were as they watched the four brothers leave. The three of them felt rather regretful that they were unable to keep the four brothers on the Tianyuan continent. They also felt slightly worried. They were worried that the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints would take advantage of the fact that the four brothers were weak to make trouble for them once they were far away. However, the four brothers insisted on leaving, so the three of them could not help them even if they wanted to. Jianshan was not present, and Shangwanmu was on Three Saint Island. The remaining Origin Realm experts on the Tianyuan continent were unable to put up any resistance against the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints. They even felt extremely fortunate that the protectors and elders did not take the initiative to attack them. Brother, Jianshan's tower. Asi looked at Ada after leaving. He carefully communicated with him through a communication technique. A sliver of confusion appeared in his eyes. Chapter 1638. Let's do as you say. Let's find a place to cultivate first and recover our energy. At the same time, some unfamiliar information appeared in my head for some reason when I broke through. I need time to digest it all. All the Origin Realm elders and protectors gathered together in the world of Forsaken Saints. None of them left first. The Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent were wary of them, but they were wary of the Tian Yuan continent as well. They were wary of whether Shangwan Mu or would secretly attack them at all times. The protectors and elders had experienced just how powerful Shangwan Mu was back in the world mountains of the world of Forsaken Saints. Even when they were at peak condition and had Ouyang Yangwan and Xiong Zhong, two early reciprocity experts, they were only able to match Shangwan Mu when they worked together. Not to mention that Ouyang Yangwan was no longer present. Among the returnants elders, Gong Shiming and several other receival experts had died. Their strength had plummeted. If Shangwan Mu moved against them now, they had no doubt that she could easily heavily injure them all by herself. With the potential threat that was Shangwan Mu, all of them felt like they were standing on the edge of a pit of fire on the Tian Yuan continent. If they were careless, they would be doomed. Let's go as well. We can't split up during this time, just in case. I'll keep the God-slaying formation safe. Once Shangwan Mu attacks us, we'll use the God-slaying formation to fend her off, Xiong Zhong said to the protectors and elders behind him through a communication technique sternly. The protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints also nodded sternly. They all felt an intense sense of danger after the Spirit King's departure. Although they knew that neither Jianxin nor Shangwan Mu would attack them since they had contributed greatly to the crisis of the world, they still needed to be on guard. As for attacking the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent, and making them lose a few more Origin Realm experts so that they could gain more benefits in the upcoming negotiations, they rejected the idea without any hesitation as soon as it appeared. If it were not for Shangwan Mu on Three Saint Island, the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent would not be a threat to them at all. Perhaps they really would have done something. As for Jianxun, the Spirit King would obviously deal with him. However, they did not dare to act recklessly due to Shangwan Mu's existence. At the same time, some of them even believed that they would be extremely lucky if Shangwan Mu did not attack them in the following days. The aftermath of the battle proceeded in an orderly manner. The devastated Tian Yuan continent gradually recovered its peace. The various organizations and experts on the Tian Yuan continent all went into hiding as the battle calmed down. They had first fought against the world of Forsaken Saints before taking part in the crisis of the world, so they had suffered heavy losses. Even the 10 protector clans that had stood for 1,000,000 years gradually declined. While the war brought heavy casualties, it also caused new changes to the situation on the Tian Yuan continent. First, the 10 protector clans entered a period of unprecedented weakness. Aside from Changyang Prefecture, the Breeze Pavilion, and the Tyrant's Blade School that were still as powerful as the midday sun, the other 7 protector clans basically only existed in name. The Holy Emperor and Holy Emperor of the protector clans had all died in battle. Without the Holy Emperor and Holy Emperor, the protector clans were not even as powerful as some ancient clans. In particular, a few powerful ancient clans seemed to be about to replace the protector clans. The peaceful Tian Yuan continent had basically entered an era where saint rulers and holy emperors did not appear. The crisis of the world had been averted, and the problem with the Inyang Saint Rock had been completely resolved. Without the rock's interference, the laws of the world gradually began to perfect. Cultivation became easier than before. Even the origin energy that had vanished for countless years had reappeared, allowing sainthood experts to break through with greater ease. Even the Holy Emperor had hopes of reaching the Origin Realm. As a result, many sainthood experts chose to remain in seclusion at this time. As they recovered, they also hoped that their strength would increase. The only thing that didn't change was the weak human realm warriors. These warriors were either fighting for their own livelihood or fighting for their own cultivation resources and cultivation methods. They were still fighting with magical beasts or their own kind. They were willing to sacrifice their lives and shed their blood just to fight for a better tomorrow for themselves. In the blink of an eye, 3 years passed peacefully. During those 3 years, a huge stone tablet stood in many cities on the Tianyuan continent. Every single stone tablet was protected by a mysterious power. They were so tough that even the Holy Emperor could not destroy them. The stone tablet was covered in unfamiliar names. On one side of the tablet was a description of how the owners of the names had once made great sacrifices for the sake of fending off the crisis of the world. Many people on the Tianyuan continent admired their heroic deeds. Other than that, rainbow clouds constantly appeared in the sky of the Tianyuan continent, the Beast God continent, and the Wasteland continent. Many people broke through during those 3 years. They either became kings, or emperors, but no one reached the origin realm. As for the sea, even though there were no auspicious clouds in the depths of the sea due to the sea god barrier, there were still many people who had made breakthroughs. The losses that the world had sustained in the previous battle were slowly recovering bit by bit. With the departure of the ice goddess Hall, the Arctic tundra's coldness rapidly plummeted, turning into a world of ice that posed no threat at all. At this moment, a golden divine hall stood silently in the depths of the tundra. The divine hall seemed to be forged from gold, shining with golden light. It was extremely eye-catching in the snow-white world of ice. Under Xiongzhong's lead, all the Origin Realm elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had gathered in the divine hall. During the past year, they had only sent a single protector to help the Tianyuan continent deal with the aftermath of the battle. The rest of them had remained in the tundra to recover. They had not set foot on the Tianyuan continent at all. They had not even set foot in the divine hall. Shangguanmu hung over their heads like a sharp sword. Chapter 1639. After a year of recuperation, we've all returned to our peak condition. It's time for us to complete the mission the Spirit King gave us before he left. As the only reciprocity expert among the protectors and elders, Xiongzhong boldly sat at the very front as he stared at the protectors and elders below sternly. The Tianyuan continent has Shangguanmu enough to make us all fear her, and we don't know if she'll interfere with the negotiations with the Tianyuan continent this time. However, you must remember that the calamity of the world cannot be averted without the sacrifice of our people. At the same time, this is a mission the Spirit King personally gave us. As a result, even if Shangguanmu wants to interfere, we can't back down at all, nor can we harm the interests of our world. We've already sacrificed enough for this world, so it's time for us to take back some things. Let's set off now, Xiongzhong said with a heavy voice. With a wave of his hand, all the protectors and elders left the divine hall and headed for the Tianyuan continent. There was an extremely ordinary mountain village near the Cross Mountains on the Tianyuan continent. A few villagers lived there, and they farmed for a living. Although there were a few young people who cultivated Saint Force, they were not particularly powerful. They could only be used to deal with a few low-level magical beasts. At that moment, in a farm in the small mountain village, an old man in sackcloth wielded a hoe. Using his muddy hands, he bent over and carefully planted vegetable sprouts into the ground. His aged eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. Houston, the people from the world of Forsaken Saints have come. Please come to the Flame City of the Flame Mercenaries immediately. At this moment, a voice clearly rang out from afar, echoing in the old man's head. The old man's expression remained the same. After planting the vegetable sprout into the ground, he patted the soil off his hands. In the next moment, his entire body suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only a home made of ordinary iron. On an isolated island in the boundless sea, 4 old men were sitting cross-legged on a large rock and discussing with each other. Brother, my comprehension of the Nirvana sword formation has reached a new level. Aside from that, I've completely grasped 3 of the sword techniques that suddenly appeared in my head when we broke through. I'm still unable to use the remaining techniques due to my lack of strength. My cultivation hasn't increased at all, but my battle prowess is incomparable to a year ago. I even feel like no early receival expert will be my opponent once I use the sword techniques, Ade said excitedly. He was unable to contain his excitement. Ada nodded. In reality, Asi was not the only one who had improved by leaps and bounds in the past year. Even the other three of them had benefited greatly. It's a pity that Jianshun is still in seclusion. Who knows how long he'll be in seclusion? Looks like we'll have to delay this indefinitely if we want to find him and resolve some of our doubts. Ada looked at outer space and gently sighed. Ada, air, a sin, a sea, the people from the world of forsaken saints have arrived. Please come to Flame City as soon as possible. At this moment, a voice rang out in the four brothers' ears. Their eyes narrowed at the same time. After a moment of silence, Asi looked at Ada and said, "Brother, should we go? We were born in this world. This world is our home, so why shouldn't we go?" Ada said confidently before standing up from the rock. He left with the three brothers. At the same time, the war gods of the Sea Realm and the Wasteland Continent received the message from the Tian Yuan Continent. At that moment, all the Origin Realm experts in the world began to move at the same time, hurrying to the Tian Yuan Continent. Taita was about to head to the Tian Yuan Continent on the Wasteland Continent when he suddenly paused. After hesitating slightly, he changed his direction and headed to the elves. The arrival of the war god shook up the elves. Everyone came to receive him politely. In the end, Taita entered the forbidden grounds of the elves under the personal lead of the Elven Queen. "Wait for me outside the forbidden grounds," Taita said to the Elven Queen with a deep, muffled voice. "Yes, sir," the Elven Queen replied politely. She stood outside the forbidden grounds obediently and waited. Taita wore golden robes within the forbidden grounds, making him seem majestic. He stood before the elven god tree silently as a gleam of light shone in his eyes. He raised his head and carefully studied the tree of life that had existed for a very long time. At this moment, an illusionary figure condensed from green life force appeared before the elven tree. As her figure was just too illusionary, apart from the fact that she was a woman, it was impossible to see her appearance at all. Aladona of the God Clan greets the great war god. The illusionary woman knelt on the ground and buried her head deep into the ground. She kowtowed to Taita as she spoke extremely politely. Taita stood there as his majestic golden robes gently fluttered in the wind. He looked at the illusionary woman and asked, "Who are you?" Taita already knew that the elven god tree was extraordinary, but his understanding of it was nowhere near as great as Jianshun and the Spirit King. At the very least, he still did not know Aladona's true identity, nor did he know that Aladona, the mighty divine king, had descended to the lower world all because of him, the war god. Aladona did not hide anything. She explained her identity and origins, which immediately stunned Taita. "You're actually a divine king? And the greatest divine king of the god clan? Are you lying to me?" Taita asked in disbelief. Back then, just the Spirit King, who had barely reached godhood, had already brought so much pressure to the Tian Yuan continent. As for the Divine King, he was an unreachable existence. In particular, such a powerful Divine King was actually kneeling before him right now. Taita found this to be unreal. "Everything I've said is true. I wouldn't dare to lie to the great war god at all." Aladona's forehead had almost touched the ground. Her respect came from the bottom of her heart. She was not faking at all. Taita sucked in a deep breath and said, "Why didn't you come out to see me when I came here in the past? Why didn't you even say anything to me? Also, why did you call me here just now?" "It was because the time was not right in the past, so I did not come to see the war god. Please forgive me. I've come to see the war god this time because of the spirit sages," said Aladona. "The spirit sages?" Taita was puzzled. The spirit sages are from the world of forsaken saints. Although I don't know why the spirit sages have appeared here, they're a remnant of the spirit's world. They're a large race in the saints' world. Although they've declined now, they still possess quite the heritage. I've learned that the war god has come to the Tian Yuan continent this time to compete for territory with the spirit sages, which is why I've come to see the war god. I beg the war god to rope in the spirit sages. They'll be of great assistance to our god clan in the future," said Aladona. On the Tian Yuan continent, the city lord's estate of the flame mercenaries had all been cleared away. Only the most elite guards remained outside. Although the defenses of the city lord's estate had been reduced to the lowest level since the beginning of time, the forces gathered inside were the greatest they had ever gathered. Yang Lai, Guihai Idao, Feng Xiaotian, Houston, Poseidon, and the other Origin Realm experts had come to the decision of using the city lord's estate as the venue for negotiations. Not only did they need to ensure their safety during the negotiations, but they also needed to strike fear into the hearts of the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. There were only 3 places in the world that could fulfill this requirement. The first was the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City. The second was 3 Saint Island, and the third was Flame City. The Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was an extremely powerful treasure. If the negotiations were held there, the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints would definitely not enter. As for 3 Saint Island, Yang Lai and the others were not confident that they could convince Shangwan Mu, so they could only hold the negotiations in Flame City. Chapter 1640. Under Xiongzhong's lead, close to 20 Origin Realm elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had gathered in the city lord's estate in Flame City. Only a portion of the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had entered the city to participate in the negotiations. Other than the protectors and elders in the city lord's estate, there were over a dozen Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints outside. If something happened during the negotiations that led to a battle, the people outside would provide support. On the Tian Yuan continent side, Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Guihai Idao, Houston, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, the White Tiger, Taita Poseidon, and the 4 brothers had all arrived. All the Origin Realm experts from the 4 races aside from Jianxin and Shangwan Mu were present. Everyone understood that the world of Forsaken Saints was not only asking for the territory of the Tian Yuan continent, but also the territory of the 3 other races. As a result, the 100 races, the magical beasts, and the sea race would all participate. Let alone the tremendous population of the world of Forsaken Saints. Just giving up a portion of the Tian Yuan continent's territory was not enough to satisfy them. Moreover, if the Tian Yuan continent gave up a portion of their territory and the 3 other races did not, the humans of the Tian Yuan continent would find it unfair. As a result, the humans of the Tian Yuan continent and the 3 other races had already discussed the matter of giving up a portion of their territory to the world of Forsaken Saints. However, they still needed to reach an agreement on the exact amount. They were not giving up the territory this time because of how powerful the world of Forsaken Saints was. Instead, it was because of their great contribution in stopping the crisis of the world. Several tens of thousands of sainthood experts, several receival experts, and a returnance elder had sacrificed themselves, allowing the primordial god silk in Jinshin's hands to possess sufficient power, allowing it to survive the crisis and save all the lives in the world. The Origin Realm experts of the 2 worlds sat across each other in the city lord's estate. All of them were stern. As the world of Forsaken Saints had invaded the Tian Yuan continent before, they had accumulated some grievances. As a result, they did not exchange any pleasantries when they met, causing the atmosphere in the city lord's estate to become rather heavy. Xiongzhong glanced past the experts of the 4 races before him. When he discovered that Shangwan Mu was not present, he could not help but let out a sigh of relief. After a moment of hesitation, he asked, "May I ask if all of your people have arrived? Can we begin the negotiations between our 2 worlds?" Aside from Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, who studied the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints curiously, everyone else looked at each other sternly. The status of the Origin Realm experts of this world was slightly different from the Origin Realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints. The world of Forsaken Saints was like a tremendous empire, and the Spirit King was the emperor, the absolute ruler. The other Origin Realm experts were divided into protectors and elders according to their strength. If the Spirit King was not present, the only other person from the world of Forsaken Saints who had reached reciprocity, Xiongzhong, would be the leader. On the other hand, the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races were all sovereigns on the Tian Yuan continent side. Even though there was a great disparity in strength, They all possessed the same status. None of them had the right to order anyone else around. Now that Xiongzhong had asked a question, the first person to answer would possess a special level of significance. The first person to speak would obviously have some degree of authority in the negotiations between the two worlds. Gradually, more and more gazes gathered on Tai Ta. Now that Shang Wanmu was not present, Tai Ta obviously became the most powerful person present with his strength. It would be more appropriate for him to speak at a time like this. Tai Ta also realized what everyone was thinking, so he just closed his eyes and expressed that he wanted to be a listener. He knew his limits. He knew that he only had talent for battle and did not have the ability to negotiate. It's a pity that Shang Wanmu isn't present. Houston, you'll be the temporary representative for the negotiations this time. May I ask if the others have any objections? The sea goddess transmitted her voice to everyone. She directly named Houston, who was dressed in sackcloth and whose hands were still stained with mud. Houston's strength was extraordinary, and he had experience as a leader. The Bloodsword sect had once shaken up the entire Tianyuan continent under his leadership. He was a resourceful person. Naturally, no one had any objections to letting Houston be the negotiator for this realm for the time being. In terms of strategy, there might not necessarily be anyone who could surpass Houston. It was just that ever since Houston went into seclusion 1,000 years ago, he had hidden all of his sharpness and lived an extremely low-key life. If he acted as the negotiator, everyone believed that he would do his utmost to protect the interests of this realm. After all, the amount of land the world of Forsaken Saints needed to be resolved through negotiations. Houston nodded slightly. At that moment, his eyes were no longer gloomy and cloudy. Instead, they had become brighter. A sharp light flashed through his eyes as he said to Xiongzhong, "If it were not for the crisis of the world, we would have fought to the death if your world of Forsaken Saints wanted to invade our land. It would be very difficult to say who would emerge victorious in the end. After all, your Spirit King is no longer invincible." Xiongzhong and the other elders frowned slightly when they heard that. A sliver of displeasure appeared on their faces, but they couldn't find any words to refute Houston's words because he was telling the truth. The reason why we're able to sit at the negotiation table this time is because of the great contributions that the tens of thousands of people from your world of Forsaken Saints have made for the crisis of the world. Their sacrifice is admirable. It's exactly because of their great contributions that the 4 races of our world have agreed to give up a portion of our land to your world of Forsaken Saints. However, the land won't be very large, so I hope you can be mentally prepared, said Houston. This is a map we've prepared. We've already marked out the regions we want. Take a look. If you have no objections, we can reach an agreement as soon as possible, Xiongzhong said emotionlessly. Xiongzhong said emotionlessly. At the same time, he took out a few blueprints that he had already drawn up. Under his control, the blueprints slowly flew before all the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races. When the Origin Realm experts opened the maps, all of them frowned aside from Tai Ta, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, and the 4 brothers. This was because the regions marked out on Xiongzhong's map actually took up half of the territory of each race. Coincidentally, we've prepared a map as well. It's also marked out the other regions we'll be giving to your world of Forsaken Saints. Please take a look, said Houston before passing a map to Xiongzhong. They had prepared several maps like this. Every single one of them had been created after the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races had discussed it. The regions marked out on each map were different as well. P.S. Chapter 1641. Xiongzhong took the map and slowly spread it out. This map was made from the fur of a high-grade magic beast. It clearly depicted all the mountains and rivers of this world, including all the regions of the 4 major races. And on this map, there were a few regions that were marked with red circles. Each region marked by a red circle occupied a small territory of the 4 major races. When Xiongzhong saw the regions outlined by the red circles, his eyebrows immediately furrowed, and his expression became somewhat ugly. Soon after, he passed the map in his hand to the Protector Elders beside him. Without exception, all the Protector Elders frowned when they saw the map, and their faces were filled with displeasure. The contribution of our world of Forsaken Saints is so great that it's only below sovereign Jinshin of your world. It's even enough to rival sovereign Jinshin, because if it weren't for the sacrifice of the tens of thousands of people from our world, even with Jinshin's existence, it would have been useless in the end. Are you on the path to destruction? We've protected your world and saved countless lives in your world, yet you're only willing to give up a tiny bit of land after we've contributed so much. Aren't you going a little too far? Xiongzhong growled. He understood that the Tian Yuan continent no longer feared the world of Forsaken Saints. Under such circumstances, the only way to obtain a piece of land in this world was through negotiations other than through war. This was the only time they would be able to negotiate, so it would be very difficult for them to change their decision in the future. As a result, whether it was Xiongzhong or all the protectors and elders stationed in this world, they had already made up their minds. They would try their best to obtain as many benefits as possible while maintaining peace. This was because it would directly affect the future of the world of Forsaken Saints. It was extremely important. Houston gently coughed when he heard Xiongzhong's words. He said, "Your world of Forsaken Saints has played a great role in stopping the crisis of the world, but there's one thing you're wrong about. Our world is not the only one affected by the crisis. Your world of Forsaken Saints is affected as well. Our world is at the very front of the battle. Once our world fails to stop the crisis, your world of Forsaken Saints will be doomed as well. In the face of the great calamity of the world, our two worlds are grasshoppers on the same rope. We are bound together for good or ill, so I hope you don't think of yourselves as heroes who have saved our world, because we are all saving ourselves." Houston said indifferently. The expressions of all the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints became rather ugly when they heard that. Houston's words seemed to have stripped them of all the contributions they had made in stopping the crisis of the world. Before the people from the world of Forsaken Saints could reply, Houston continued, "In reality, no matter what contributions your world of Forsaken Saints has made, there's no need for us to give you any land at all, because Jinshan played a leading role in stopping the crisis. If it were not for Jinshin's treasure, no matter how special your bloodline is, you would not have been able to avoid the fate of being devoured by the crisis. The reason why we agreed to give you some land after the war was to complete their final wishes and allow them to rest in peace." On the negotiation table, both sides were arguing fiercely about the issue of territory. Both sides could say a lot of things, and neither side was willing to give way to the other. Fortunately, the Origin Realm experts of both worlds were fearful of each other. As a result, both sides intentionally controlled their emotions to avoid a situation where they began to fight even though the argument was very intense. The Tian Yuan continent feared the number of Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints and Xiongzhong, who had reached reciprocity. The protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints feared Shangwan Mu on Three Saint Island. Although Shangwan Mu'er was not present and Three Saint Island was tens of millions of kilometers away from Flame City, they could cross that distance with a single step with their strength. Very soon, the first day of negotiations came to an end. Neither side made any progress after that day of negotiations. The people from the Tian Yuan continent were determined to give up as little land as possible, while the protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints wanted a piece of land that they were satisfied with no matter what. Naturally, the two sides were unable to reach an agreement. The Arctic tundra was not within the territory of the Tian Yuan continent, and it was also far away from Three Saint Island. A golden divine hall stood silently on the tundra. Within the divine hall, all the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints had gathered there. This world has gone too far. Our world of Forsaken Saints has contributed so much against the crisis of the world, yet they're saying that we're worthless. They're only willing to give us a tiny bit of land. Our population is so great, so the tiny bit of land they're offering is nowhere near enough, a protector furiously said. The people in the hall fell silent. Their complexions were very ugly. They had understood the attitude of the Tian Yuan continent after the first day of negotiations. Clearly, It would not be easy for them to obtain more land in this world. It's a pity that the Spirit King isn't here, so we have to be cautious during the negotiations. We don't dare to offend the people of this world, even if we ignore the fact that Shangguan Mu is watching over us. There's the even more terrifying Jianshan right above us. He's no weaker than the Spirit King. If Jianshan suddenly emerges, an elder said with a heavy voice. His face paled slightly as he reached the end of his sentence. Xiongzhong gently sighed. That's true. Although Jianshan is in seclusion, no one knows when he'll emerge. If he suddenly emerges and wants to deal with us, none of us will be able to make it back to the world of forsaken saints alive. I think we should delay the negotiations until the Spirit King arrives. The origin realm experts of the four races remained in Flame City on the Tianyuan continent. After the first day of negotiations, they gathered together once again. Only Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, and the four brothers, who did not care about the matter of land, were not present. The six of them had left after the negotiations had concluded. The world of forsaken saints sure is greedy. The land they want is just far too large. How can we give up such a large piece of land so easily? After all, they're not people of our world, Guihai Yidao said with a heavy voice. The negotiations regarding land can't be concluded in a day or two. In my opinion, let's delay the negotiations until Jianshan emerges. We'll ask him for his opinion. After all, if it weren't for the fact that Jianshan possessed the strength to fend off the Spirit King, we wouldn't have the right to negotiate with the world of forsaken saints, Poseidon said. All right, let's delay the negotiations until my great-grandson emerges from seclusion. After all, my great-grandson has the greatest right to speak, Yang Lai chuckled. Yang Lai said with a smile. When he talked about his great-grandson, there was an unconcealable pride between his brows. Yang Lai, you seem to be afraid that we don't know that Jianshan is your descendant. Don't be so complacent, Guihai Yidao sneered. Guihai Yidao jokingly scolded from the side. He was really jealous that Yang Lai had such a heaven-defying descendant. A huge blood-red cloud hovered in outer space. Jianshan sat within the cloud as the essence of the cloud condensed in the surroundings, turning into a red mist that was even darker in color. It permeated Jianshan's surroundings and was absorbed through Jianshan's pores through his breathing. After the red mist entered Jianshan's body, it was rapidly converted into chaotic force. The rate at which it was refined was clearly much faster than before. At this moment, the chaotic Niden in Jianshan's dantian was no longer the same as when he had just broken through to the 8th layer. His chaotic Niden slowly grew as he constantly refined the energy in the cloud. Even though the growth was very slow, every tiny bit of growth meant that he was one step closer to the 9th layer of chaotic force. I might be able to break through to the 9th layer of the chaotic body here. When I break through to the 8th layer, my cultivation will be equivalent to reaching early reciprocity from receival, skipping returnants. However, if I reach the 9th layer here, just what level of cultivation will my chaotic body reach? Will I reach peak reciprocity? Or will I directly break through to godhood? Jianshan thought. At the same time, he was filled with eagerness. The 8th layer of the chaotic body gave him battle prowess at godhood, but that was only battle prowess. His original cultivation was only at early reciprocity, so just what level would his battle prowess reach if he also reached godhood? Chapter 1642. The negotiations regarding territory between the Tianyuan continent and the world of forsaken saints will be held once every 10 days or half a month. However, since the two sides were never able to reach an agreement, the negotiations would always end on bad terms. Flame City's reputation skyrocketed once again as the place where the future of the two worlds would be negotiated. It rapidly rose, reaching a new level of fame. Not only did everyone on the Tianyuan continent know about it, but even across the vast territory of the world of forsaken saints, there were very few people who did not know about Flame City. The origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent had chosen Flame City as the location of the negotiations because they feared the origin realm experts from the world of forsaken saints. They planned on using Flame City to intimidate the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints, so that they would not dare to take action during the negotiations. If they destroyed Flame City, they would directly offend Jianshan. At the same time, the actions of the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent had indirectly increased the status of Flame City. Although the current Flame City could not compare to the 7 great capital cities in terms of scale, there was no organization in this world that could match up to it in terms of prestige. The current Flame City was as great as the Sacred Spirit Hall of the world of Forsaken Saints. It possessed an irreplaceable status in this world. The Heavenly Enchantress was a beauty on Three Saint Island. Her beauty was even greater than that of a goddess. She sat on a large azure rock on the mountain peak with an otherworldly presence. The simple zither of the demonic cry was placed before her. As her slender fingers slowly plucked the strings, she played a heavenly melody. The music seemed to have fused with nature, possessing an ethereal quality. It could not help but calm down as soon as it reached the ears. The sound of the zither reverberated through the air above Three Saint Island, causing the fishermen who lived on the island to become mesmerized. There were even large, fat fish that had floated to the surface of the sea in the distance. They seemed to have become mesmerized by the sound of the zither. Beside the Heavenly Enchantress sat a handsome young man. However, the young man was not affected by the zither at all. He stared at the deep blue sea in front of him, at the distant Tian Yuan continent, and at the clear sky above him from time to time. The young man could vaguely make out a small patch of red clouds at the end of the blue sky. However, the red was not something that could be seen with the eyes of ordinary people. After a long while, the music ended. Shangguan Mu stowed the zither away and glanced at outer space with her enchanting eyes. She murmured, "The evil power has weakened slightly. Your father should be absorbing the power in seclusion, but at this rate, it'll take quite some time for him to absorb all of it." The handsome young man looked at Shangguan Mu when he heard that. He said with some worry, "Mother, the power is so evil and so powerful. Will father be in danger if he absorbs it?" Shangguan Mu sank into her thoughts. She said, "Your father's cultivation method is as special as yours. It can't be measured by common sense. Moreover, he knows when to stop. Since he's bold enough to absorb it, he must have absolute confidence." "Then I don't have to worry." The young man immediately let out a sigh of relief. He was Shangguan Aojian. After a moment of thought, Shangguan Aojian continued, "Mother, the Tian Yuan continent is currently negotiating with the world of Forsaken Saints. The difference between the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints is still very large, so they might be at a disadvantage during the negotiations. They need you right now, so why don't you go to the Tian Yuan continent?" Shangguan Aojian also hoped that his mother could go to the Tian Yuan continent very much because he had grown attached to the continent during his travels there. He obviously did not wish for the Tian Yuan continent to suffer too much during the negotiations with the world of Forsaken Saints. Moreover, the Tian Yuan continent was his father's homeland. Shangguan Mu looked at Shangguan Aojian, and a sliver of gentleness appeared in her eyes. She said, "Xiao Bao, I know you're worried about the Tian Yuan continent, but your worries are unnecessary. Let alone the fact that the Tian Yuan continent isn't at a disadvantage, the negotiations between the two sides won't end in a short amount of time. However, no matter what kind of agreement they reach during the negotiations, the final decision will still be made by the Spirit King and your father. If your father doesn't agree, no matter how great of an advantage the world of Forsaken Saints gains during the negotiations, it won't count in the end. Do you understand?" "Mother, I understand. With our current strength, we don't need to fear the world of Forsaken Saints at all." Time flew like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed since the first negotiation between the two worlds. Both sides still failed to reach an agreement after 10 years of negotiations. They both understood that it would be very difficult for them to reach an agreement that would satisfy both sides. In the end, they could only wait for the strongest person of the two worlds to make the decision. As a result, the two worlds only went through the motions in the following negotiations, stalling for time and waiting for the Spirit King and Jianshan to emerge from seclusion. In the past 10 years, the matter of the Tian-Yuan continent, the Wasteland continent, the 100 races, and the Sea race dividing up a portion of their land spread like wildfire. It caused quite a stir. Some people did not care about this matter, but there were also some people who wanted to defend their land and defend their homeland with their lives. Ever since the Tian-Yuan continent had been shattered in the battle against the world of Forsaken Saints, it had been split into 4 regions, which are the eastern, southern, western, and northern regions. The regions were separated by an extremely wide river. The river formed a cross that ran through the entire continent and connected to the sea. The place where the 4 rivers intersected was the ruins of Mercenary City. It was now filled with a large amount of water, but there was an extremely special region there. A mysterious power protected the region, preventing the surrounding seawater from entering. This special region was the tunnel that connected the Tian-Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. At this moment, the tunnel was completely calm. After so many years, the tunnel had stabilized long ago. Although there would be powerful ripples of spatial energy in the tunnel from time to time, they would not be like when it had just formed, where large amounts of violent energy would surge out and fly into outer space. At this moment, the stable spatial tunnel suddenly began to ripple. The ripples rapidly expanded, and in the end, it actually caused a huge reaction from the entire tunnel. The entire tunnel began to shake violently, and extremely unstable streams of violent energy wreaked havoc within. Very soon, a figure gradually appeared in the extremely unstable flow of energy in the tunnel. The figure was very blurry at first, but as he approached, his figure gradually became clearer. He was a middle-aged man with a head of flowing black hair. He carried a dark, metal sword on his back. His appearance was nothing special, and he seemed extremely ordinary. His clothes were very simple as well, giving off a sense of simplicity. The middle-aged man was indifferent. Even though he seemed extremely simple, he gave off a dignified presence. He walked through the tunnel step by step, and as he advanced, the entire tunnel trembled. Violent streams of energy were constantly produced, wreaking havoc in the tunnel. However, when the streams of energy that were enough to heavily injure the Holy Emperor approached the middle-aged man, they were silently reduced to nothingness. In the end, no streams of energy remained within 10 meters of the middle-aged man. The changes in the tunnel were not purposefully caused by the middle-aged man. He was just too powerful. As he walked through the tunnel, he seemed to have reached the limit of what the tunnel could endure, which was why the tunnel had changed. Even though he had concealed his origin energy and presence, he was unable to avoid this situation. The middle-aged man did not move quickly, but he crossed a great distance with each step. In just a short while, he emerged from the tunnel and appeared in the sky above the Tian-Yuan continent. Suddenly, the Tian-Yuan continent began to churn. The thick layer of clouds in the sky was silently reduced to nothingness, as if it had been forcefully crushed by a terrifying pressure, disappearing from the world. At the same time, a terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings, enveloping the entire world in a single moment. It shocked everyone and made all the beasts in the surroundings prostrate themselves before it. The expressions of all the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints within the Golden Divine Hall changed. Soon afterward, joy filled their faces. It's the Spirit King. It's the Spirit King's presence. The Spirit King has emerged. Quick, let's go support the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints all cried out in joy. They charged out of the Divine Hall as quickly as they could and hurried toward the tunnel. In the past few years, all of them had felt extremely frustrated. They had to negotiate with the Origin Realm experts of the Tian-Yuan continent. They clearly did not treat the Origin Realm experts with any importance and could easily wipe them out, yet they did not dare to raise their voices. As a result, the negotiations had gone on for 10 whole years without any results. This was because the Tian-Yuan continent had Shangguan Jianshan, who had emerged from seclusion at some point, and the Spirit King was not present. As a result, their negotiations with the Tian-Yuan continent were restricted. Now that the Spirit King had emerged, the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints all gained confidence. They were obviously overjoyed now that they had someone to rely on. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts of the four races opened their eyes at the same time in Flame City. They all stared in the direction of the tunnel as they became extremely stern. Shangwanmu, her eyes narrowed as well. She stared in the direction of the Tian Yuan continent as a sliver of sternness appeared on her face. Chapter 1643. Welcome, Spirit King. With Xiong Zhong in the lead, all the Origin Realm elders and protector from the world of Forsaken Saints hurried over as soon as possible. All of them bowed politely to the Spirit King. They cannot be described as slow. In less than 2 seconds, all of them had crossed over 10 million kilometers from the moment the Spirit King stepped out of the tunnel. The Spirit King remained indifferent. He glanced past them before raising his head to look at the sky. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space, landing on the blood-red cloud that hovered in outer space like a sharp sword. He frowned slightly. Jianqin still hasn't emerged from seclusion, the Spirit King murmured. His voice was rather heavy. He then looked at Xiong Zhong and asked emotionlessly, Xiong Zhong, how have negotiations gone in the past 10 years? Xiong Zhong bitterly replied, Spirit King, the people of this world have always insisted on giving us a small piece of land, which is nowhere close to what we're satisfied with. Coupled with the fact that we have Jianshan and Shangwanmu on Three Saint Island, while our world of Forsaken Saints doesn't have the support of the Spirit King, we've been holding back during the negotiations. We haven't dared to fall out with the people of this world, so we haven't made any actual progress in the past 10 years. If that's the case, let me talk to the people of this world, the Spirit King said emotionlessly. His voice was rather cold. At this moment, the space nearby gently pulsed. Soon after, all the Origin Realm experts of the four races appeared. They were all very stern as they faced the Spirit King. After appearing, they all clasped their hands at him. They had no choice but to come. At the very least, there was no one here. It was better than the Spirit King personally coming to Flame City. You've come at just the right time. Let's end the negotiations that have lasted for 10 years today. Xiong Zhong, hand over the map of your territory to them, said the Spirit King. Yes, Spirit King, Xiong Zhong replied politely. He casually tossed a map to the Origin Realm experts of this world. Big baddie, Xiao Ling murmured to herself as she glared at the Spirit King viciously. Even though the Spirit King had once fought alongside the people of this world during the crisis of the world, Xiao Ling could never forget the huge demonic figure the Spirit King had created when he attacked the barrier beneath Mercenary City. She had been quite frightened back then. The piece of paper that Xiong Zhong had tossed out hovered beside the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent. The Origin Realm experts all revealed troubled expressions. None of them extended their hands to catch the piece of paper. Spirit King, there's no need to rush this matter. We'll discuss it after Jianshan returns. What do you think? At this moment, a beautiful voice rang out. Shangwanmu had also hurried over from Three Saint Island. She stood in the air with the simple zither of the demonic cry in her arms. She was stern. If Jianshan were present, I would obviously discuss it with him. Since he's still in seclusion, you people are enough to decide on the matter of land in this world. It's the same if I discuss it with you, said the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent's world all revealed rather ugly expressions. Negotiating with the Spirit King? They did not possess the strength to do so, let alone protect their own interests. The strong preyed on the weak. This was the law of survival in this world. If the Spirit King wanted to start a war with them, if he was a vicious person, it was possible for the Spirit King to personally kill them if they angered him during the negotiations. After all, the only person who could contend against the Spirit King, Jianshan, was not present. If the Spirit King really did move against them, only death would await them. Even Shangwanmu would not be able to escape. Just as the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent had no idea what to do, a voice suddenly rang out from outer space. Xinjian, why don't we discuss the matter of land after I emerge from seclusion? Your world of forsaken saints has been here for countless years already, so there's no need to rush. Jianshan, it's Jianshan. That's Jianshan's voice. Jianshan has finally spoken. So he's concerned about the Tian Yuan continent as well. The origin realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent all rejoiced when they heard Jianshan's voice. They all let out a sigh of relief inside. Unknowingly, Jianshan seemed to have become their pillar of support. In particular, Jianshan had become their pillar of support when they faced the Spirit King. The Spirit King gazed at outer space as his eyes shone brightly. He said emotionlessly, Jianshan, if you enter seclusion for 1,000 years, am I supposed to wait for you here for 1,000 years? Also, are you going into seclusion to obtain even more benefits in the upcoming negotiations? 1,000 years? It won't be that long. I'll emerge in 10 years at most. Xinjian, I understand you, and you understand me as well. Whether my strength increases or not, it won't affect the final outcome of the negotiations. It's all thanks to the people of your world of forsaken saints that we were able to avert the crisis of the world this time. I admire their valiant sacrifice, so I will definitely help them complete their final wishes so that they can rest in peace. This is my promise to you, Jianshan, as well as my promise to all the forsaken saints who have sacrificed themselves. The light in the Spirit King's eyes flickered. He said, all right, seeing that we're acquainted, I'll wait another 10 years for you. I'll come again in 10 years. With that, the Spirit King returned to the world of forsaken saints with Xiongzhong and the others. Aside from him and Jianshan, no one else understood what he was implying. Only he and Jianshan understood what he was implying. The origin realm experts of the world of forsaken saints all exhaled deeply when they saw the Spirit King lead all the origin realm experts back to the world of forsaken saints. They were completely at ease now. They felt like they had almost suffocated from the Spirit King's suppression earlier. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 8 years had passed since Jianshan and the Spirit King had agreed on a 10-year agreement. A total of 18 years had passed since Jianshan had entered seclusion in the blood-red cloud. 18 years was quite a long period of time to ordinary people. It was enough for a child to grow up, but to sainthood and origin realm experts with long lifespans, 18 years was just a short period of seclusion. The blood-red cloud hovering in outer space did not disappear, but its volume had shrunk rapidly. It was not even a tenth of its original size. In particular, the ripples of energy within the blood-red cloud had become extremely weak. Jianshan sat in the blood-red cloud as he cultivated. After absorbing the terrifying energy from the blood-red cloud, his Niden had grown to a limit. This was the limit of the 8th layer of the chaotic body. Chapter 1644. Afterwards, Jianshan experienced the pain of shattering his core to refine his body again. It was the same experience, the same pain. This was the 9th time he had experienced it. He had already accumulated a wealth of experience from shattering his core to refine his body the previous 8 times. So the 9th time was a walk in the park for Jianshan. It was as easy as lifting a finger. As Jianshan's chaotic force gradually strengthened, a vast and terrifying presence radiated from him. It caused the entire cloud to churn violently. The presence even expanded beyond the cloud, filling the surrounding space. It caused the space there to distort violently as the stars flickered. Cracks had even appeared in the space several dozen meters around Jianshan. The cracks were formed from the crushing of space by Jianshan's presence. At this moment, Jianshan's presence was so vast and powerful that it had completely surpassed early reciprocity or even mid-reciprocity. Even late reciprocity experts would struggle to match it. It had surpassed the limits of what this world could endure long ago. At the same time, his presence continued to climb. Jianshan's disturbance in outer space naturally did not escape the attention of the origin realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent. At that moment, all of them raised their heads at the same time. They looked at the floating cloud in outer space. What a terrifying presence. Has Jianshan broken through again after 18 years of seclusion? Tai Ta sighed in amazement as he cultivated in the War God Hall. With a flash, he vanished from the War God Hall. Guihai Yi Dao, Yang Lai, and Feng Xiaotian gathered together on the Tianyuan continent. Guihai Dao stared at outer space with mixed feelings and said, Jianshan was already extremely powerful. He no longer feared the Spirit King, who was a godhood. Now that he's broken through again, I really wonder just how shocking his strength will be after breaking through. What a terrifying talent. Feng Xiaotian muttered to himself as a look of shock appeared on his face. He's actually broken through again. My great-grandson sure is impressive. However, his strength has increased so quickly in the past few years that I hope it won't leave behind any side effects and cause his foundation to become unstable. Yang Lai laughed aloud. His face was filled with pride, but there was also a sliver of worry. Jianshan's strength had increased just too quickly. Even Yang Lai, who had lived for so long and experienced so many storms, found it rather difficult to bear with such a rate of growth. Fantastic, Big Brother has become stronger again. You don't have to worry about that bad guy anymore. That bad guy is no longer Big Brother's opponent. Xiao Ling clapped her hands excitedly. Xiao Ling clapped her hands as she bounced up and down. She was extremely excited. Xiao Jin and the little white tiger, who were also in Flame City, smiled happily as well. All the origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent gathered 100 kilometers away from the blood-red cloud in outer space. It was almost 10 years away from the negotiation with the Spirit King. If Jinshan's strength could break through now, it would be extremely meaningful for the negotiation. All the origin realm experts hovered in the distance. They did not approach the blood-red cloud. They quietly waited for Jianshan to emerge from seclusion. They knew that Jianshan would emerge soon. Several days later, Jianshan's presence slowly receded within the blood-red cloud. He gradually calmed down, and the fist-sized chaotic Niden in his dantian shrank to the size of a bean once again. It had shrunk, but the chaotic force within it was clearly much more powerful than the 8th layer. Jianshan smiled. Originally, he thought that reaching the 8th layer of the chaotic body was his limit in this world, but he had never thought that the evil spirit would actually leave him with a fortuitous encounter after dealing with the crisis of the world, allowing his chaotic body to reach the 9th layer. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. However, at this moment, Jianshan's face suddenly changed. In the next moment, a presence filled with brutality suddenly radiated from his body. There was also a sense of destruction and evilness within it. His eyes became red at that moment, and even his hair rapidly turned from black to blood red. As a result, Jianshan seemed to be filled with evilness, like a demon. At this moment, Jianshan felt like his consciousness had become blurry. All that remained in his heart was endless slaughter and destruction. It was as if he had become an existence that only knew slaughter and destruction. He did not fear the heavens or the earth. He would kill gods and destroy Buddhas if God stood in his way. He had no feelings or pity at all. Kacha! With an almost undetectable sound, a tiny crack suddenly appeared on the bean-sized chaotic Niden in Jianshan's dantian. The cracking of the Niden was accompanied by intense pain. The pain made Jianshan shudder, and he suddenly roused. The redness in his eyes gradually receded, and his hair, which had almost turned blood red, returned to its original black color. Even though Jianshan's change had only lasted for a few seconds, the Origin Realm experts who were still waiting outside sensed the sudden change in his presence. What is this presence? Why is it so terrifying? Could it be that the origin of the calamity hasn't been destroyed yet? The sea goddess said in a deep voice. Everyone gathered there became extremely solemn. Did something happen to Jianshan during his cultivation? Feng Xiaotian asked with a heavy voice. Everyone's faces became very ugly when they heard that. Even though they were doubtful, none of them dared to enter the blood-red cloud to check. They were not as powerful as Jianshan and the Spirit King. Even though the cloud had weakened, it still posed a certain level of threat to them. Most importantly, Jianshan was still in seclusion. They were afraid that they would disturb Jianshan if they barged in. Jianshan was stern in the blood-red cloud. He had sensed his change earlier as well. Coupled with the crack in his chaotic Niden, it was clear that something had happened to him when he reached the 9th layer of the chaotic body. Jianshan stared at the blood-red cloud and said with a heavy voice, It looks like the energy from the crisis of the world can't be absorbed so easily. After all, the crisis of the world is a special existence that even the laws of the world can't do anything about. Even if I cultivate the chaotic body, it'll still cause me some trouble because the crisis of the world is even more powerful than I am right now. If my strength was far greater than the crisis of the world, I believe I wouldn't have any problems absorbing the energy and would be able to refine it easily. However, I need to understand just what kind of problems I've left behind so that I can think of a way to deal with them. Jianchen immediately checked his body. Although the chaotic Niden in his dantian had cracked, he did not pay too much attention to it. His chaotic Niden was not perfect and had affected his strength, so he could only use 80% of it. However, even then, it was still much more powerful than when he was at the 8th layer of the chaotic body. What he truly cared about was the change in his consciousness earlier. This was what scared Jianchen.